This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
After the first oval race of the year at Motegi, the Classic Indycar Series heads to Birmingham, Alabama, and to the Barber Motorsports Park for round 3 of the 2019 series and the series' 50th race in its history. Currently, it is Matt Cook at the top of the point standings and will be wanting to increase his advantage at the top here today, and 90 laps awaits the drivers at what is one of America's most technical racetracks, where if you take your eye off the ball, you will not see the checkered flag. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the iRacing Esports Network and RaceSpot TV with Jack Stiles and Randy Chenworth in the booth. And Randy, Barber is going to be a tricky circuit for the drivers and one which they need to keep their eye on the ball for the whole distance.
Absolutely right about that. We've seen Barber be a very, very tricky track for IndyCar drivers, both in real life and in the sim, and we also saw it yesterday in the Porsche Esports Super Cup. Be very tricky. A lot of drivers struggling with this track down here in Alabama, but it's a fantastic circuit, and it's become really a staple on the IndyCar series in the real world.
Of course, this year, Barber Motorsports Park celebrating its 10th anniversary of being on the IndyCar schedule and managing to get through the race without any rain delays this year, unlike last year. Qualifying is currently underway for round 3 of the Classic IndyCar Series, and it is currently the points leader at the top of the standings, Matt Cook. However, Lucas Laville, Randy, he seems to be getting quicker and quicker over the course of the qualifying session. He won't improve, though. He's done all 4 of his laps that he's allowed to do.
Driver to watch, though, I think is going to be Josh Chin here in this number 93 Team Camaro car. He's yet to put in a lap. He's actually on his 3rd of the 4 that he's allotted, and he's yet to get a complete lap in. But we know Josh can be quick in this series. He was the quickest in practice by a couple of tenths. So he might put in a stellar lap if he's able to get a clean one through.
And we have just heard that the 107% mark will be a 1 minute 11.171. Currently, all of the drivers who have been in qualifying laps so far have met that time. If they don't meet that time, they are at the steward's discretion of whether they will be able to take part in this event or not. Josh Chin going to cross the line to set a lap time. And he's going to do a 106.5. That puts him 3rd on the grid there, Andy, up with Lucas Laville and Robert Grossman, actually splitting the Logykal Vortex teammates.
Yeah, he is, and it's very tight between those top 3. 7/100ths of a second separated Matt Cook, Lucas Laville, and Joshua Chin as they now work down in towards, or as Josh, work down in towards the hairpin. So he's going to be working hard here trying to make this work with only about a minute and a half left in the session.
And of course, there's one driver who's qualified to take us round this circuit and to have a look at it, and that's Joshua Baird. And here's his lap guide.
Welcome to your 2019 Logykal Classic IndyCar Series track tour for Barber Motorsports Park. We will be going quickly through the downhill left-hand turn 1 corner. Entering the very round turn 2 and 3 carousel, we will be feathering the throttle to push the cars to their limit before going through the straight with one of the many blind corners like turn 4. This short stretch will gain us some speed before braking hard into the turn 5 and turn 6 horseshoe. There is a short straight followed by the turn 7 complex, which consists of 3 very complex corners, starting with a totally blind entry followed by a tight S-bend that will take us a bunch of practice to really get it right. Exiting turn 9, we will have a nice little break of straights and a fast speed S-bend that may present one of the very few opportunities for passing on the track. Entering 12, we will have a downhill S-bend that we will be able to take really fast, carrying our momentum through the corners. Rounding out to turns 15 and 16 are the final of the S-bends you will see on the track. This S-bend is slow and tight, followed by one of the other rare passing opportunities going down the start-finish line. This has been a track tour brought to you by Josh Baird and Robert Grosser. I hope you enjoy the race.
Qualifying has finished up at the Motorsports Park, and it's time for the third time in 2019 to take you down to your starting grid and have a look how the drivers will be lining up. Joshua Chin was able to get a pole on his final qualifying lap from Matt Cook with a 3/10 advantage. Lucas Laville is going to be lining up third, and the 2018 champion going to be taking his first start of 2019, and that's Henry Bennett in fourth. Robert Grosser is going to be lining up in fifth, Joni Kainen in sixth, Dave Walsh seventh, Timo Siniemi eighth, Matt Molnar in ninth, and Randy Shoemake is going to be down in 10th position. Jan Hoffman, one of the favourites coming into today, looking very strong for Vortex Sim Racing, not having a great qualifying. He's down in 11th position with Andrew Wood alongside him in 12th. Hans Pitkanen 13th, Johnny Garrett 14th, Jos van der Ven down in 15th, and Carsten Brodby in 16th. Andrew Adair Saunders 17th, Mike Gerlich at 18th, Andrew Aiken 19th, and Franz Josef Stumm going to be lining up in that 20th position. Ronnie Peterson, Logan Simmons, Joshua Baird, Caleb Weekly, Todd Novosad is going to be rounding out the 25-car field who put in lap times. Jonathan Diggs and Zach Svahar looking like they may not be taking part in today's race. That is our 25-car grid, Randy, as they head into today's 90-lap race. And going into turn one, that's going to be important because it's a very fast left-hander down the hill. And as we've seen in the past at Barber Motorsports Park, that really is a big crunch point for the field.
It really is, and it's going to be a big struggle for these guys getting things sorted down in towards turn one. It's a relatively quick sprint down this front straightaway, and because of that, the cars don't have the time to maybe get it spread out as they do in some of the bigger tracks, and it's a very fast turn one, and we've seen, but it's tight. It's downhill. The track really does work with you and really helps with the grip, the way you turn into the corner, and because of that, you can carry a lot of speed, and it is not uncommon to see issues going through there the first time here at Barber.
And of course, the Logykal Classic IndyCar Series, of course, is brought to you, as always, by the Logykal Innovative Engineering. As always, we're going to be supporting this series, but also along for the ride in 2019, New Centric Solutions, Edify Sync, and the Carol Hatton Breast Cancer Care Center are going to be taking on and sponsoring certain parts of these events. And of course, the Oval Triple Crown is going to be starting off next week, and that is going to be sponsored by the guys over at New Centric Solutions, one of the first events in the Classic IndyCar Series to also be offering prize money to the drivers. So the Texas 600 kilometers is going to be an interesting race in 2 weeks' time. But of course, back here today, the drivers out on the pace lap, everyone now heading into the corkscrew, one of the big parts of this circuit where you've got to be careful. The part which we're now seeing them all head through, just hidden behind the trees, really is another one of the pinch points on the circuit. And you just about miss the part of the circuit which always catches out drivers. Caught out the driver of Takuma Sato, who won the IndyCar Series.
I mean, I'll give him the position because I know he's fast.
Fourth career win, but almost took him out of the race in the final few moments.
Start? No, he didn't grid.
Down towards 12 and 13.
I don't know if he's in the pits or if he's
see the drivers start to form up. A little bit of tyre warming going along in the back of the field.
Maybe he just wants
as the pace car will come down on the pit lane. It will be under the control of Joshua Chin to bring us round to the green flag. It's going to be quite a long time between the pace car coming in and the green flag flying here at Barber. It always is, because how far the start-finish line is down the home straight. The pace car will dive left onto the pit lane, and we are going to get ready to go green for the third round of the 2019 Classic IndyCar Series. This series' 50th race in its short history. And Joshua Chin is going to jump. We are racing here at Barber. A good start from Mr. Chin and the team car member number 93. Already getting a jump on Matt Cook. Single file as they head into turn one. A little bit of doubling up behind. Some drivers going off a little bit wide onto the grass, but everyone nice and clean as they head into the carousel for the very first time. Currently looking at the number 3 machine of Robert Grosser under pressure from Dave Walsh, the winner. The first time out in the series this year at Interlagos. And it looks as though down to the outside, Dave Walsh is going to go try and get a move done at the hairpin. And I think he's going to get it done. So Walsh moving himself past Robert Grosser. Grosser's down 2 positions in the opening of this race. So a bad start there for Robert Grosser, Andy. And just looks as though, as they head themselves through the end of the first lap, everyone's now getting single file. Everyone's starting to get into that rhythm they need to go in. It's a long race. And up at the front of the field, Josh Chen has already got a half a second advantage over Matt Cook. So in the number 6 machine, Matt Cook, the rookie of the year last year, currently second position in the race, first in the championship. He's going to want to try and make his advantage over Lucas Laville, currently sitting in third. Laville's had a cracker opening to the start of this championship. And a podium position for him today will be an absolutely brilliant result. Joni Kainen in fourth in the number 77 machine. Of course, one of the drivers always to watch out for in this series, as the top 8 seems to have just broken away. Matt Molnar putting pressure onto Robert Grosser now as they head into the hairpin. He's going to look down to the inside in the number 29 machine, but Robert Grosser, nothing that he can do as they head themselves out of the hairpin. And on lap number 2, Randy, everyone off to a nice clean start. The only driver who seems to have hit trouble is the 001 of Henry Bennett.
Yeah, not a great start there for Henry, but a couple drivers early picking up spots. Joni Kainen, like you said, in the 77, 6th up to 4th on that opening lap. Also, Timo Aitiniemi, he picks up 3 spots going from P8 up to P5. So it's a long race here, but those drivers are going to be happy to have those spots behind them early.
And as we head ourselves to the end of the second lap, it's looking as though some drivers are moving. Dave Walsh has had a spin. So the winner at Interlagos has had a spin and he's got damage. So someone who was looking very strong to be contending for the championship this year, the Winter Series champion. Replay is up on your screen, ladies and gentlemen, as we see them heading over the tunnel through this final section of the course, and it just snapped left. That's a very weird incident for the number 37 machine. No rear wing. He's currently going backwards down the pit lane.
Yeah, just completely broke on him. Not much he can do about that one, and that's pretty much going to be run over for Dave Walsh. And that's going to be really frustrating. Only 2 laps in, he hadn't even started that 3rd lap, and his race is already, done and over with. As these guys starting to get separated out in front pretty early here.
They are indeed. We've also just seen trouble for Andrew 8 heading through the carousel that time. So he's hit trouble in the 27. And has filed to the back of the field down to 24th position. Currently still looking at Matt Cook, this battle for the lead. It's not that much of a battle because Josh Chen has managed to pull a gap of 1.1 seconds. He's pulled 3/10 on this lap alone. But as they head themselves through 15 and 16 once more, Randy, that seems to be where Matt Cook is strong. That seems to be where he's closing the gap on Josh Chen. However, the first part of the lap, that seems to be where Chen is much, much stronger.
Yeah, well, I don't think it really matters where on track Matt Cook is reeling him in at the moment, because I think Josh is just the bulk of the lap opening this gap up. That's really the only way you get one of these leads in about, a couple laps, get a full 1.1, 1.2 second opening, as Josh is just quicker everywhere else. But we'll have to wait and see, as Matt has become a very respectable road course racer in his own right. Used to be an oval specialist, I remember, way back in the day, and I'm talking way back when I used to race against these guys. But the last handful of years, he's really come on strong on these twisty racetracks.
And it's showing today up at the front of your field. And of course, these two have also managed to pull away from Lucas Laville in third. So at the moment, P1, P2, and P3, they're all currently in a world of their own. Not really got much to do with anyone else out on the circuit. There is a battle for 4th position going on between Joni Kainen and Timo Isinjami, but it's currently split by about 0.6 of a second. So between these two drivers, not too much going on. It seems to be, though, the mid-pack where a lot of the action currently is. We've got a pack running from 8th down to 15th, Randy. Very large field, and at the back of that one is Logan Simmons. He's already up 7 positions on where he started in this race. He's going to be wanting moving up even more as we currently look, and right on board with the 68 of Johnny Garrett.
Yeah, we sit on board with Johnny Garrett as he works his way through following Jan Hoffman. But you're right, it is a big pack of cars here in your mid-pack all the way as they run down through turns 2 and 3 and get ready to head up the hill here at turn 4. That crest can be so tricky, especially we haven't really gotten to talk about it, and we're going to bring up the weather here. It's very, very hot today here at Barber, and that's going to make it difficult for these guys to keep that traction underneath them. As you can see, 101 degrees Fahrenheit track temperature, clear skies. It's going to make these tires very, very difficult to deal with and not particularly grippy.
And of course, the strategy today is also going to be important. With these cars, we are going to see a 2-stop race. However, with these high track temperatures and the high tire degradation that we do see here at Barber, we could see some drivers trying to go for a 3-stop here, Andy. Maybe try and get some more.
Oh, car off in front of Johnny.
Yeah, we got a car. That's Jan Hoffman. The 05 has had an issue as he headed himself through the 12 and 13 S's. Riding on board with the 05 machine, we'll find out what's happened. The fast left and right-handers all looking good so far for the Vortex Sim Racing driver. But as he headed up to the tunnel section of the circuit, A little bit too much curb on the inside, and that just seems to unsettle the car. He has got some front wing damage, so I expect to see Jan Hoffman in nice and early as possible for that driver to get that front wing repaired.
Well, he's not going to go through and come down pit road just yet, so still maybe owing us as you see the big gaggle of cars. They scream off of turn 3, up the hill at turn 4, and down in towards 5 and 6 once again. Didn't, of course, come down pit road just yet, did Jan Hoffman. And thing is, I think if you even have a little bit of aero damage here, Jack, I think you're going to want to try to push coming down pit road as late as you possibly can. You see side by side behind, that's Carson Brodry and I believe Logan Simmons trying to make up some more spots. He's now up, I believe make that 8 on the race.
That is indeed 8 spaces that Logan Simmons has managed to get himself up in this race, up to P number 14. Not too far for him actually to get up to the rear end of the top 10, only about 4 or 5 seconds. So everything so far looking nice and simple for Logan Simmons as we see him running very wide on the exit of the tunnel section of the course, managing to keep it together. But of course also one thing that you have to be careful of, Randy, is the grass on the outside of the circuit. And with these cars, that grass can bite so hard because of how much power these things have got and the lack of traction control.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just, you know, how is it going to deal with the tires? It's getting these cars off track. There's, you know, you have the potential for under tray damage, and that's not something you want to have to deal with as well, especially here. This is on the schedule, I think, going to be the most important track as far as downforce levels go. I mean, you look at the quick corners they have, you're going to have these wing angles absolutely cranked. No long straightaways to speak of as well, especially on top of that. You get any sort of damage at all to the aerodynamics, things are going to be great.
And on his returning race to the Classic IndyCar Series in 2019, Henry Bennett has already had to take the tow back to the pit lane, that time into the hairpin. I think he might have just lost the rear end. Not sure if anyone helped him round there, Randy. But by the looks of things, Henry Bennett's race is over. Replay is up on the screen. Let's have a look. You can see ahead the number 33 car. So I wonder whether he was going for a move on the car ahead, and it all went very wrong.
Oh, well, he kind of diced in and out of trying to make that pass, and let's see what happens here. I think there was a little bit of help. We just sort of lost it. Going to rewind the cameras back just a little bit, and we're going to ride on board with the car that's actually in front of Henry. We're on board with Henry now. We're going to see him get the run here through turn 1s and then turns 2 and 3. You see the car out in front of him just clip the grass, but as we switch the cameras over onto Ronnie Peterson, actually watch Henry dice in and out of making this move, dives up the inside, then we switch back over to Ronnie and just locked up in front of him. Ronnie really had not much Ronnie could do with that.
Now, and I think for Ronnie Peterson, it was a case of he was committed to the corner. He was going through. Nothing was going to stop. So he has rejoined the race, still running down in 17th position. Currently under pressure from Joshua Baird behind. But he has got front wing damage, so I would expect him to just cycle back a little bit in the field. New fastest lap of the race to Josh Chin, your leader. Now the lead is out to 2.3 seconds. And he's just done a 1:07.2. That's about a 10th faster than what Matt Cook has done so far. His best lap in the race, Randy. So for Josh Chin, he's on a charge as we see the number 32 machine. I believe that is the driver of Andrew Wood. It is indeed getting past the driver of Randy Shoemake.
Yeah, so a little bit of a swap of position there as well. It's been an exciting 9 laps, hasn't it? And that's the thing with this racetrack is this fight's going to continue down into the hairpin. Andrew Wood going defensive from Shoemake. Shoemake's off in the grass in the AeroX car. Not great for him.
So Randy Shoemake struggling on these opening laps, clearly not finding the grip that he needed on the outside of the circuit. A very hot track today, as we've already said, so these drivers will be struggling for grip. They'll want to look after these tyres over the course, especially these opening stages of the race, where everyone's going to be pushing really hard to try and make sure that they are there come the end of the first stint. Probably another 10, 15 laps, maybe 20 laps before we see drivers start heading down onto the pit lane. They can run as far as 33 laps today. However, we don't expect to see that. I reckon we're going to see 3 pretty evenly cut stints today, Randy, just to make the strategy work better and try and minimize that time on pit lane.
Well, that's the big thing. You mentioned the fact that it's a 2-stop race, but as far as strategy goes, these guys don't have much flexibility whatsoever. You're expecting maybe 33, 34 laps on a stint of fuel. We're doing 90 laps here today, so you're even if you go on the long strategy through that first stint, you're not talking a particularly short stop at the end, and you can't really do anything with the tires as well. It's not like you can come down pit road really, really early on all the stints and, you know, maybe undercut it every single time due to the fuel loads. You don't have enough fuel to really play anything with that. So everyone's pretty much going to be locked in the same strategy of about 30 laps, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see the bulk of the field just cut this in even thirds and go 30, 30, 30.
I think that is going to be how a lot of the drivers approach this race today, making sure that strategy is right, and also means that they're not putting as much stress on the tires, Randy. Maybe we could even see some guys come in at about the 25 lap mark a little bit later on and just try and go for the tire life as opposed to the fuel length, because I think after about 25 laps, those tires are really going to be suffering, especially today.
Well, I mean, I'd say the tires are probably already suffering as it is, you know, just taking a quick look at Joshua Chin, and we look at his lap times. I mean, actually, take that back. His times really haven't fallen off and have really only gotten faster. So maybe the tires seeming relatively in good shape here today. Doesn't seem to be much drop off. Maybe a situation where the compound is stout enough that we're only going to see these cars get quicker and quicker over the run as the fuel burns off. Because Josh's first couple laps, of course, no tire warmers on these cars, so the tires do start out cold. 17.4 and a 17.6 Josh's first couple laps, and he did that fastest lap of a 107.253, the 8th trip around the racetrack.
Yeah, so it looks as though for Josh Chin, the car was just quicker and quicker, and ever since has just carried on getting quicker. I think this is probably, unless we see the temperatures drop during the race, this is probably going to be the fastest lap times we see all race long, because those guys are going to hit traffic at some point during the race. Of course, with the Barber Motorsports Park being such a short circuit, it does mean that the traffic is going to be quite heavy. The lap times that we're seeing lower than 1 minute 10, and for Matt Cook, we've been saying that Josh Chen has been the fastest so far, Randy, in this very opening stage of the race, but Matt Cook has just done a 1 minute 7.1, which is a fastest lap of the race, but on that lap alone, he took 3/10 out of Josh Chin. So maybe Matt Cook's car set up for a car which is going to fare better later on in the stint.
Seems like it could be the situation as you take a look at the lap gap. So 0.3 of a second is definitely a big chunk of that. The gap was still, 2 seconds or so before that lap. So still a big chunk of time, but let's see what Matt can do here. Or if maybe it was a mistake from Josh Chin. That said, that 107.4 really not off the mark. Only about a 10th dropped there for Josh we typically saw. So maybe, like you said, Matt's car maybe coming in just a little bit.
As we see once again, it looks as though the gap has come down. Let's see what the lap times compare like this time around. And once again, Matt Cook taking even more time out of Josh Chin. Just 0.2 that time there, Randy. But the tyres may be starting to prove for Josh Chin that they are starting to fall away just that little bit. And that's going to be interesting to see how Matt Cook also plays into this one. But maybe also Lucas Laville. He's still within about 6-7 seconds of these guys up at the front of your field. So there's still a chance for Lucas Laville, if anything happens, to get involved in a battle for the lead.
I think for Lucas, it's sort of, I think he's lost too much time here in the early goings. I mean, he's 6.1 seconds back in the first 13 seconds of this race, first 13 laps of this race. I think that's going to be a gap that Lucas really can't deal with. I think it's basically going to become a run for these two, and I don't know if my eyes deceives me or not, but it seems like that white and cobalt green number 93 has really opened up this gap this last half a lap or so.
Yeah, the gap's currently looking at about 1.8 seconds, 1.9 seconds. It's growing with every single corner. So this time around, I expect to see a faster lap time from Josh Chin. So Chin, indeed so, going much faster than Matt Cook. 0.3 quicker that time around, Randy. So all of a sudden, Josh Chin, it's almost like they're playing dominoes with each other and can't decide who wants to be quicker. Yeah,
that is sort of what it seems like, isn't it? So can't quite make up what they want to do here as down in towards the hairpin. Once again, let's see if we can find some fights up and down your field. A little bit of a tight one here between Hans Pickenen and Johnny Garrett as they work down the front straightaway.
So Hans Pickenen currently sitting in 11th position. So this is the battle for the final position in the top 10. Important points on the line for the midfield guys here today, and it's going to be interesting to see how this whole theory of the midfield develops over the course of 2019, because of course we can see different drivers actually excel on different parts of the circuits. Live timing and scoring, as always, is available. Head yourselves over to racebot.tv/timing, and you can track your favorite drivers throughout the course of this race. Currently on lap number 14 of 90, approaching the time when we're going to be starting to think about that first round of pit stops. And for Hans Pickenen, that could be important because he could try and go for the undercut on Johnny Garrett ahead, or go for risky and go for the overcut and pit later.
Definitely could be. I mean, it's we always talk about it in these classic IndyCar series, especially with these sorts of races. You know, what do you want to do if you come down pit road a little bit sooner? You know, especially like, let's say you just cut it in even thirds and go 30 30 30. You're gonna have, in an aggregate, a shorter pit stop in that first stop than your competitors who maybe go a little bit long and fill the car back up. But of course, those drivers who go long, those extra 33, you know, those extra, 3 or 4 laps or so, you know, they're going to have a longer fill sitting there filling that car back up, but their second stop will be much shorter, especially if they then go again, because that's in theory about 4 or 5 less laps in fuel they're going to have to take on that pit stop. So it's sort of pick your poison in terms of what you do. Do you want to do a short stop now here in about 10 or 15 minutes when you eventually come down pit road and try to get yourself out in front of your competition now? Or do you want to try and play the long game, be able to jump them, I think, later in the race? I think a track like Barber, I honestly think I may go for the long game here just because so much of the field is as spread out as it is. I'm going to bring the track map up because you already talked about the fact that lap traffic could come into play. The 93 car is your race leader, and the 12 machine of Andrew Adair Saunders is the first car that'll be going a lap down. So 15 laps and lap traffic already becoming very much of an issue.
And of course, it's going to get worse and worse over the course of the race, especially for the leaders. As we're looking back at Josh Chin up at the front of your field, you can actually see on your screen already the back markers being Andrew Adair Saunders and Caleb Weekly. Actually, it looks as though Andrew Adair Saunders and Caleb Weekly have swapped positions in sort of the last lap or so. Andrew Adair Saunders getting ahead, so he's promoted himself up to 19th position here, Randy, in the number 12 machine, as he heads himself into turn number 12 and 13.
Yep, and Josh Chin is going to deal with this 10 car first and foremost, and he gets that done and over with relatively quick. We are going to check back in, though, with some other fights. This is Ronnie Peterson fighting with Josh Baird. We're supposed to have Josh's VR feed, but having problems with our low latency streams once again. Not really sure what the problem was. May have heard the radio, in fact, from those drivers during the start of the race. But for Josh Baird, doing well here, just slowly picking spots up. Currently runs 14th. That's up 9 from where he qualified. That's a nice first stint from that 23 car.
And it's the biggest mover and shaker so far in the field is Josh Baird. So himself being up 9 positions has really played into his hands. The other driver who was looking good for getting the most, or the winning the competition for the most position gains, was Logan Simmons. But Simmons has been parked on pit lane for the last 8 minutes or so, Randy. So he's obviously decided that either something wasn't quite right or he's hit trouble. But we're looking at Ronnie Peterson. He's still looking for a way past Josh Baird. And already into that final corner, you can see it building up. There's grass being brought onto the circuit where the drivers are trying to eat every inch of this circuit and manipulate this place to try and get the most out of their lap time.
It can definitely be a factor for these guys trying to deal with that slippery grass off circuit, especially like you said, if it starts getting dragged onto the racetrack, it can affect the grip and can make things really difficult. Luckily, I think we haven't seen too much really get dragged out onto the racetrack, but it's still a factor that these guys have to think about.
And one other driver to watch out in this behind them is the number 31 machine of Mike Gerlicher. So they're all involved with each other as they head themselves into the corkscrew. It looks as though it's pretty even distance between each of the 3 cars. Last time around, the fastest of all 3 was Mike Gerlicher, but of course that could be due to the draft through the fast left right. They're going to be flat out in one of these machines with, of course, the least amount of downforce we've seen in an Indy car in sort of the last 10-15 years was this IR05. You look at the DW12 and the IR18, Randy. They've got ridiculous amounts of downforce as Ronnie Peterson looks to the outside into the second to last corner. Maybe try and shove it down the inside into the last corner. Not going to happen.
Yeah, there's issues for Josh Baird through that last sector. I think that's one of the places Josh is really struggling. He just doesn't seem comfortable. And you look at the way that Josh is able to immediately reopen up that gap after the 33 car of Ronnie Peterson was all over the gearbox of Josh Baird. So maybe just not liking that long right-hander, and that is the part of the track jack that drivers will often struggle with, because trying to get the car on the brakes and get it slow down can be difficult. But you're right, talking about this car, of course, you know, a lower level of downforce than both the DW12 on the IR18, especially in this road course configuration. But not only that, these guys don't have push to pass to work with, which of course we have on the iRacing service in the DW12 on the IR18, and that's going to make passing really difficult for these guys. If we were on the latest and greatest technology that iRacing has for IndyCar racing in the IR18, these guys would be able to use that button to help themselves get around their competition. They don't have that.
Oh!
And Ronnie Peterson and Mike Gerlica, he tries to avoid, and they get caught up in an incident.
I'm not sure whether he was trying to avoid. I think they both went off at the same place. We can look at the replay, and it looks as though heading into the 12 and 13 section of the course, riding on board with the driver of Mike Gerlica, I believe ahead Ronnie Peterson lost the rear end, and Gerlica just did exactly the same. It was that classic example of synchronized spinning. In fact, actually, Ronnie Peterson hit the curb really hard on the entrance to 12.
Oh, you're right.
As they went over the top of the hill, they both just lost the rear end.
We're actually going to watch this again because they both did it in completely different ways. Because if you watch Ronnie Peterson out in front, he makes the same mistake that we saw a driver make earlier. He just turns in too early right here and jumps that curb, and that completely upsets the car and where he loses it. Mike Gerlica, just going up and over the hill, he just got a big bite of oversteer. So the both cars end up together in the same spot in the wall, but they both did it in completely different ways. I haven't seen an incident like that, I don't think, in a long time, as we are going to jump forward to the battle with, I believe this is Matt Molnar and Andrew Wood.
So this is the battle for 7th position out the circuit as they head themselves through turn number 2 and up the hill over the crest. That blind right-hander, which all the drivers seem to struggle with, is the number 35 machine. Looks like he's stopped. That's Carsten Brodby down in 13th position, having a few issues coming through turn number 1 that time. But this battle, these guys are currently separated by about half a second as we look at Carsten Brodby. Not quite sure what happened to him. But Randy, half a second between these guys, when you actually think about it, it's not too much. And for Matt Molnar, it's only got to be one little mistake from Andrew Wood, and all of a sudden he's right on the tailpipe. Yeah,
I mean, it's right there. And if you're Matt Molnar, you don't really worry about this gap if it's even opening or closing. I don't think you want to push too hard, especially through this first stint. And we've seen, and just as we talk about that, making mistakes, and the fact is I'm getting ready to mention it, he goes off the track there. Lucky to get away with that one, because that's a high-speed sector of the racetrack, and it's not often you can dip tires onto the grass there and lift a tail to tail.
And that was the very similar thing that we saw from Logan Simmons happen at that same portion of the racetrack. So I wonder whether as the stint goes in and the tyres probably are starting to drop off, and as I say that, the leaders are still doing the same lap times as they were 10 laps ago, Randy. But for a lot of people in the midfield, they're already dropping into the 108s, 109s. So the tyres really are starting to fall off a cliff, and they're really starting to struggle. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how this now develops over the course of the next few laps. Of course, the pit window opening in just 3 laps' time, I think we're going to see some of the guys come down really early and get some new tyres.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think some people are going to go early, but the thing is that that's a dangerous trap to get yourself into, because if you're struggling on the tires, if you come down early for a pit stop, that means you're pretty much, forcing yourself to go long a little bit later in the race. I've always liked being of the mindset that if they're the point I want to struggle, if they're the stint I want to struggle on old tires, I want to struggle on old tires at the end of the race, at the beginning of the race, rather than at the end. So we will definitely, I think some of these guys come down pit road 26, lap 26, 27, maybe 28, probably at the earliest, somewhere in that window. But I would say that if you're in that situation, try to set yourself up for the shorter stints in the middle and at the end of the race rather than right here at the start.
And those issues that we saw just a couple of laps ago has allowed Matt Molnar to drop back into the clutches of Randy Shoemake. So Randy Shoemake, the driver who we saw himself have a few issues not too long ago, is now within half a second of 8th position. So this could be another position for the Aero X driver, Randy, to get himself a few more points in what is probably not his most strong point, is road racing. I seem to believe that Randy Shoemake is more of an oval specialist, much like Matt Cook was once upon a time. But of course, Matt Cook now really turning himself into a bit of a multi-purpose driver, both on the oval and the roadside.
Yeah, I mean, it is, definitely a good run here from Randy, and he's definitely, I think, put in a lot of work as you see that car again. Matt Molnar just nailed that curb on the left-hand side, and we're going to see more cars, I think, struggle with that, Jack, all race, because, I mean, we've already seen a couple cars really, be victimized, create their own incidents from smacking that curb on the left-hand side and that high-speed left and right-hand sector of the racetrack. And I think as this race goes on, people are going to get tired. People are going to get worn out. and it's just going to become a struggle, I think, for people to maintain focus. And you know, most other tracks, you turn in a little bit early, you might hop the curb a little bit. That one, you're going into that corner at 130 miles an hour near enough, and that's not a fun trip over the curb at that speed.
No trip over a curb at any speed usually is a lot of fun, especially at the speeds that you're approaching this corner and into the corkscrew as well. This section of the course is really important because you really have to abuse that curb on the left-hand side as you head down the hill there, Randy. But of course, that's another one of these curbs that if you just hit too hard, all of a sudden you're in a world of pain and you're actually off on the left-hand side of the circuit, and then you're looking for a place to rejoin, and you're just losing more and more time as the drivers have that problem. As we head on, we are now on lap 24 of the race, which means that the pit window is going to be beginning to open with 67 laps remaining in this event. So we could see some drivers come down, try and get that early stop, and try and take a little bit of a gamble when it comes to running the long stint on the fuel at some point during this race.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like we have any takers thus far. I think everyone is going to be waiting until that sort of latest point. And you sort of look at the lap times teams and drivers are doing at the moment. You know, there's really not been much tire issues, I think, at all for most people. I mean, you look up and down the field, most drivers have just gotten quicker and quicker over the course of this run. Randy Shoemake, for example, he started this race out running 109s. Of course, there could be some traffic involved there holding Randy up, but he was in the 109s and he had that incident and has slowly gotten himself into a bit of clean track and a bit of clean air, and he's running a second a lap quicker than he was at the start of this race. So for a lot of these drivers, I think they're just getting quicker as this fuel load burns off more than anything. And actually something else coming into this, of course, Jack, no quick repairs in this series. So those drivers who pick up damage hopping over those curbs or maybe having a couple self-spin incidents we've seen thus far, it is, you know, that's going to be potentially terminal damage for those guys if they can't get back out there on the racetrack and, or excuse me, if they can't get the repairs on pit road.
Yeah, of course, obviously, new rule for 2019, the drivers losing the chance of being able to use that quick repair in the Classic IndyCar Series. And of course, one of the other features brought in by iRacing during this year was the anti-stall and the stalling feature. That's being allowed in this series, so the drivers don't have to worry about jumping onto the clutch pedal, or if they have got the dual clutch on the steering wheel, using that at some point. Obviously, if you spin, you just have to worry about getting the car stopped and making sure that you are in a safe position on the racing surface. Currently looking at the 05 machine, this is Jan Hoffman down in 11th position. And behind him is going to be Hans Pitkin, currently separated by about a second, 1.2 seconds here, Randy. But it looks as though they're pretty equal on lap times between each other. So Hans Pitkin, we could see actually moving himself up the order just that little bit.
Definitely could, but like you said, you never want to be even on terms of the lap time. You want to be going quicker, but I think right now is not the sort of, you want to be picking the pace up a little bit, excuse me, but with the pit stop cycle so close, I don't think you need to be or want to be too aggressive in terms of trying to reel in a gap. You know, just try to, if anything, maintain a margin, especially with this first pit stop cycle. Don't go all Hail Mary trying to pick up everything you can through this first stop.
And of course, that first stop is going to be very, very important. Clearly, some drivers using low fuel to their advantage. One being Josh Chin. He's set another fastest lap. He's gone below the 1 minute 7s. He's done a 1 minute 6.992. So for Josh Chin, clearly there's still quite a lot of speed left in that leading car. 4.5 seconds is the gap between himself and Matt Cook in second position. But we're still looking at Jan Hoffman, or we were looking at Jan Hoffman, back, of course, to Matt Cook.
Well, you timed me to that pretty well, didn't you?
I did indeed. So Matt Cook, as he heads himself through turn at number 2, still looking pretty composed in that car and still running pretty similar lap times to Josh Chin. So for the leaders, we haven't seen much drop off in lap time, Randy, which maybe shows the tyres aren't as bad as we were expecting them to be.
You're right, and it's one of those things. I mean, I even remember this in the old IndyCar as well, in this IR05. I mean, there was sort of a phase on iRacing where a lot of the cars that were getting raced just didn't have much drop off, even in real life. I mean, we had the Williams F1, we had the Dallara IndyCar. The GT cars were very similar as well in the fact that the tires were just very, very stout. And I remember, you know, I drove the IndyCar a lot. I drove the Williams a little bit. I actually drove that. I pretty much dedicated a full season to that. I wasn't very good, but they were all cars where you could basically, once you got out there on the racetrack, the tires really didn't drop off. the actual compound was very stout, and you would basically start up a stint and you would slowly go quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker, specifically on the road courses. On the ovals, of course, it was a little bit different. The Williams F1 car was like that as well. I mean, even Hugo Luis, he has stories of doing some of the old World Championship Grand Prix Series races in the Williams and actually not changing tires for the entire duration of one of those Grand Prix. So the tires themselves are pretty stout, as Matt Cook deals with a little bit of lap traffic there of Joshua Baird. Really closest fight up inside of your top 5, though. Seems like this battle for 4th and 5th between Timo Isoiniemi and for Timo Isoiniemi and Yanni Kajanen. And really, this entire field has just gotten itself spread out, Jack. And I'm going to bring the track map up. You know, everyone's really got themselves gapped out a lot. There's a couple points you see where it seems like cars are close together, but most of those are just lap cars or faster cars dealing with lap traffic rather than fight for position.
Yeah, so as we approach the 1/3 distance marker in this event, everyone just seems to have settled into that groove. You said Randy made sure that they're just in a safe position. Of course, the end of the first stint is going to be coming in the next 5 or 6 laps for these drivers, so not too long before the pit lane is going to get very, very busy. And once it does, we could see some guys start to pull themselves back in. As the 05, we were looking at him, and he's gone round. I think he's had an incident with a back marker. Not quite sure which back marker that was. However, that could have been the car that he was fighting with. Replay up on your screen. Let's have a look.
So let's see what happened to the Vortex Sim Racing driver of Ian Hoffman through turns 2 and 3. See the lap traffic out in front of him, and maybe some technical issues going on with that driver. And well, Yan, I think, just looked completely caught off guard. So unfortunate there for Yan. Pretty much, I think, just locked up those rear tires and spun. And he gets a little bit of nose damage. Remember, if I remember correctly, he was nursing a bit of nose damage already. Surprised he's actually not come down pit road yet to get that front wing replaced.
Yeah, it'd almost be sensible for Jan Hoffman right now to just pull to pit road, make sure that his car is repaired, or at least get some of the repairs done, and get out and ready for that second stint. The unfortunate passenger in that one was the number 10 machine of Caleb Weekly. He's currently sat on pit lane, Randy. He's been sat on pit lane for 53 seconds, and that was actually a tow. So for Caleb Weekly, I think maybe he's called it a day after that incident with the 05 machine.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, maybe a little bit of issues there. We saw him, seemed like he was having some technical problems with that race car as he you know, we've taken pictures of black holes, which we know bend space and time and existence. So maybe experiencing a little bit of blinking in and out of existence there for him. But he's pulled that car off after that incident. So Jan Hoffman, I don't think he'll be overly excited about that situation. But now for us, it's really just waiting to see what happens through this pit stop cycle. Is this a difficult pit entry and pit exit for these guys? And I'd love to see some people get it wrong here, Jack, so that some of these fights can close up.
As I'm just going to fire up my 10 radio telescopes to have a look at the damage of that number 10 machine. Everyone else still looking nice and busy. He's currently actually the only car on pit lane at the moment. And obviously Mike Gerlich is still getting damage repairs from an incident earlier on. Looking back at the 05 machine, the next car ahead of him on the circuit is Hans Bitkenham, 5.5 seconds up the road. And he's not that much faster as we see our first visitor to pit lane. The number 23 machine of Josh Baird has come down to make his first stop.
So Josh Baird, the first driver, pulling on towards pit road. You see him in the box. Going to be 4 tires and fuel for that car. So pretty much everyone on lap 30 here. We have another car traveling down pit road as well. This is really the first of your leaders. Both Timo Isoiniemi and Robert Grosser, the 2 Vortex Sim Racing teammates, they roll on towards pit road. And talking about the fact that the tires have been good, Josh Chin has just set another fastest lap of the race at a 106.689. So just quicker and quicker and quicker are the cars out in front.
And for Josh Chin, he's beaten the fastest lap of the race by about 0.2 of a second on tyres which are 31 laps old. On a fuel tank which is pretty much going to be empty, he's going for another lap, so he's really going to go long. I feel like Timo Isoiniemi and Robert Grosser were both going for a very similar strategy, both the Logykal Vortex Sim Racing teammates. So obviously a little bit of discussion between the two as to how they're going to approach this race. Everyone else at the moment looking like everyone else looking as though they are pretty settled, and it's going to be interesting to see how these top 2 differ. Whether Matt Cook will come in, or whether Josh Chin will come in and then Matt Cook will follow, or whether they are really going to push the limits of how far this tank of fuel can go.
I think the main thing is, though, is that they've pretty much already committed to the same strategy, Jack. So it's sort of, you know, even if there's an extra lap gotten here, for example, we know Josh Chin, very talented at fuel saving, probably the best driver at saving fuel while maintaining pace on the surface. I really don't know a driver that's any better than Josh. So even if Josh opens up a lap or two, it's not like it's going to be an insane advantage, I think, in the grand scheme of things, especially because it's a quick lap here. You don't use that much fuel over a trip around this racetrack at Barber. So for these guys, they're pretty much all committed to the same strategy. As race leader is going to come in after 32 laps. Jan Hoffman will actually follow him in behind. Matt Cook will also hit the pit road. I'm actually curious, will Lucas Laville follow his Vortex teammate strategies? Seems like it. Everyone coming down pit road after 32 laps.
So 32 laps seems to be the point where the drivers are deciding that that is enough and they aren't going to run any further, as they're all going to come down onto the grid. And in fact, actually, Lucas Laville, on the last time around, he managed to get below the 107s as well. So Laville getting a little bit more pace in the closing stages. Clearly the tyres not having the same effect as we were expecting them to. Out and away is Josh Chin in a time of 10.8 seconds. We're going to see what Matt Cook does in comparison, 11.3, so half a second longer for Matt Cook, stationary in his pit box while he was refueling and getting some new boots on his car. Lucas Laville out in a time of 10.6, so not too much changing at the front of your field here, Randy, but everyone out and away after that round of pit stops.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of different fuel strategy here. We saw Josh with a slightly shorter stop, Matt Cook going a little bit longer, but everything kind of in the ballpark, really, so no kind of big issues there. But I think if you're Matt Cook, I don't think that he's close enough in terms of the actual gap to be able to keep in control of Josh, to be able to push this fuel advantage he may have for the next pit stop, especially now. Josh is going to be on light fuel. You know, only a second in that time extra for Matt Cook means that in theory we should only see a second taken off when he comes down pit road for a second stop in about 30 laps time. So Matt has to try to get on it, but I think he's going to be having to try to chase down a light fuel Josh Chin just a little bit, and I think that's going to be nigh impossible. But of course, it's important to remember we saw Josh in a situation like this for the season opener at Interlagos, and he made a mistake there. So maybe something to keep in mind is there maybe a little bit of an issue with the armor there of Josh Chin that he might fall issue to.
I mean, maybe, you never know. Of course, Matt Cook is still 6 seconds behind. It's possible that he could make a move and try and get down the inside or close the gap, and indeed he probably will try at some point during this event. But I think his best shot now in this race to even try and attempt the win is for something to happen to Josh Chin. We've seen it happen already this season in the opening round, of course, at Interlagos. Motegi looked like a pretty good race for Josh Chin. But for Interlagos, yeah, that final pit stop and that exit out of the pits, that little bit too much power on the touch on the grass, that ruined his day.
Yeah, I mean, it really did. I mean, and that's all it takes in these cars. I mean, they're so difficult, especially on brand new tires. It's always been an issue in these cars, getting out there on new tires, and it's not uncommon, for drivers on the road courses to skip a set of tires just to keep the things warm, because on new rubber, they are just all over the place when the tires are cold. And you know, especially at Interlagos, very, very fast pit exit. Luckily for Joshua Chin here, there is grass on pit exit, but it's not nearly as much.
And of course, after everyone has completed first round of pit stops, we might as well show you how your top 8 currently looks in the opening, after the opening third of this 90-lap event. Josh Chin is leading by about 5.5 seconds over Matt Cook. Lucas Laville in third. Yoni Kyan in fourth. Timo Sniemi and Robert Grosser, the two Vortex Sim Racing teammates, currently in 5th and 6th. Andrew Wood having a good run today in the number 32, up 5 positions from where he started. He's 7th, and Matt Molnar still holding on to 8th. So that top 8 still looking pretty competitive. No one's really that close on the racetrack, and only about 20 seconds between Josh Chin and Matt Molnar. So you never know, by the end of this race, Randy, we could see Josh Chin actually lap most of this field.
20 seconds? Oh, you're talking
yes,
okay, between ahead of Chin. I was like, the gap is 55. So yeah, I mean, you are absolutely right about that, because I'll bring the let's see, who would you like to compare to Josh Chin? Pick a driver and we'll do the track map. So Josh Chin, and what other car would you like represented?
Let's have the one that I was just talking about, the 29 of Matt Molnar. Yeah, in 8th position.
Okay, let me find Molnar in our graphic. And voila. So the 93 car, your race leader. The 29 runs 8th.
So actually, that's not too much difference between the two on the racing surface for Josh Chin to close that gap. And with Josh Chin running the lap times that he's been running, that gap's going to close pretty quickly. I reckon by the next stop, he's definitely going to have the top 10, also everyone outside the top 10, 1 lap down. He's currently working on it because everyone outside the top 11 is 1 lap down. But I have a feeling also by the end of this race, most people are going to go a lap down. So I think unless you're in this top 5, there's not that much that you can do about the higher positions, especially for the podium, because the 3 drivers at the front have just driven off into the distance.
Yeah, I mean, they have. I mean, Josh is nearly 6 seconds out in front. Matt's done a good job, by the way, bringing that gap down a little bit, I think, since the start of this stint. Well, as I say that, Josh opens it up another 3/10. Of course, you know, both drivers probably ebbing and flowing with the lap traffic. You know, so Josh 6 seconds out in front of Matt. Lucas a further 8 seconds behind Matt. Yoni Kajanen 17 seconds behind Lucas. I mean, it really is a huge gap for those top 3 and really shows the pace that those drivers out in front can have and how competitive they can be.
And of course, currently looking at the driver of Team USA down in 5th, who is around 2 seconds behind the driver. Currently ahead of him, that is Yoni Kajanen, 1.7 seconds to be precise. And last time around, they ran pretty much identical lap times. There was only 0.005 of a second between the two. So you never know. Team USA could try and close down that gap over the course of this stint. Try and put a pressure on the driver of Yoni Kajanen for 4th position. And it looks as though this time around, there has been some gains at around a couple of tenths of a second as we head into the corkscrew. So the first half of the lap, pretty good for Team USA.
Yeah, I mean, it's been good thus far for Timo as he works down the corkscrew and trying to rein in that gap to the 77 car down through this quick chicane. See both of the drivers go and on the exit. Now up to the left-right, we've seen a handful of drivers struggle with. Driver in front, Yoni being, I think, a little bit more brave on the curb than Timo is willing to be through that first apex of that left-right sector. And I don't blame Timo whatsoever for being a little bit patient with the race car here as we're approaching half distance.
And I think that's probably a sensible thing to do. 53 laps remain in this event, so not too far off the halfway distance point in this race. And of course, it's still quite a way to go. It's going to be about 1 hour and 45 minutes for these drivers today. So we're looking at a decent race length. Of course, the time limit for the Classic IndyCar Series, especially on these road courses, is 2 hours. So 2 hours for these drivers to complete the full distance of the race. And of course, no safety cars, no full course cautions here today. So there should be no problems with completing that. Had we had full course cautions, Randy, I think that we probably would have seen a little bit more of a longer race. But the full course cautions only coming into effect on the ovals and on the roadside if we require them, as in we end up with a car park at turn 1.
Yeah, it really is if we end up with a car park and if there's a bunch of cars blocking the racetrack. That's the only time you're ever gonna see that come into effect here on this racetrack, and in this series, excuse me, on the road courses. I mean, it's very rare in general, even for the private leagues that employ the full course yellows, for them to come out. I think, you know, Neo Endurance has been running for about 5 years now, and I can only remember 3 full course yellows off the top of my head. So I mean, it's a once in a blue moon sort of thing that these series will employ. And actually, has Classic IndyCar Series ever actually had to use a full course yellow on a road course?
Well, I'm the person with the power of calling the full course caution if we do need it, and I've never called one, and I reckon I've had that power for about a year. I can't recall ever having one on a road course. I can recall having 18 cautions in a race at New Hampshire last year.
Yeah, I've done similar races to that as well. It was a Milwaukee race. I think we hit 15.
And I can remember last year, I think me and you, I think it might have even been 2017, me and you did a race and it went for green for about 90% of the race. We had 2 cautions right at the start. It just depends on what happens. Sometimes the circuit plays into the hands. Of course, New Hampshire is a circuit we always see, for some reason seem to see drivers struggling with. It's such a funny racetrack and some people can't get their heads around it. And I seem to remember when we went there in 2017, it was 17, 18 cautions. And it was sort of a very stop-start race. And actually for the drivers as well, that's quite bad for them because it gets them out of a rhythm. With these road courses where we don't see the full course cautions, they don't have that issue.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned the difficulties in New Hampshire. It's just a kind of a weird groove you have to run to be quick there. It's just sort of, the actual racing line is very odd. You just watch the NASCAR cars go around there, which of course they run there every year. And you can see that the racing line is a little bit odd. Compare that to Milwaukee, where if you were to look at them from above, you'd look at Milwaukee, New Hampshire, and be like, well, they're basically the same racetrack. They're identical. But Milwaukee, the racing line is so much more, it just feels more natural. New Hampshire is sort of its own thing, whereas Milwaukee feels like a supersized Martinsville in terms of how you have to drive it. The actual corners are just so much easier to get your head around and wrap your head around, that I think that's part of the reason we see drivers not struggle as much. I think, of course, as well, New Hampshire, if I recall correctly, does have variable banking as you go up the racetrack, and that can oftentimes be huge issues for these Indy cars. Actually, did we have Robert? No, I take that back. Never mind. I thought I saw something and I didn't.
And of course, while we're on the subject of cautions, one circuit which would be very interesting as to whether we see any cautions at the race this year, that's Belle Isle. Of course, Belle Isle last year was one of the first, this Classic IndyCar Series was one of the first series to run that circuit. I believe it was also the first broadcast which the Racebot TV did at the circuit. And that could maybe be a circuit where cautions are a good thing, because of how tight and twisty it is. We've seen it in other series where the track very quickly gets blocked after an incident, and the drivers need neutralizing for that to be cleared safely.
Yeah, you are right. I mean, it can there's a couple tracks where things can get mighty difficult for these guys, and it's can potentially really be problematic, especially on the schedule. I mean, here we're third race at Barber. We go to Texas in a couple of weeks' time after this race, and after that we go to Indianapolis for 77 laps around the road course. We don't actually run the Indianapolis 500 in this series until November, and actually that's going to be an interesting thing for us here at RaceSpot. And I'm actually a fan of this, Jack, as you see Timo make a little bit of a mistake through turn one, clips the curb on entry, and ends up tracking out, puts a couple wheels on the grass. Lucky to get away with that one. But it's going to be a change of pace, having all these Indy 500s not stacked up in May. I remember, I think it was a couple years ago, I believe we did 5 Indianapolis 500 broadcasts in 3 weeks. And now these series are starting to spread them out a little bit. Of course, you have the official iRacing Indianapolis 500 that happens in there. This series has their own, as well as a couple other series as well.
And of course, I think that was 2017, the year where we had 5 Indy 500s in 3 weeks. And I think we might have even had 2 in one weekend. I can't quite remember. Or 2 in one day. I'm not quite sure.
I don't think it was 2 in one day. I think it was probably a Saturday and then a Sunday.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's more likely 2 in one weekend. But of course, the Indy 500 in this series not running until the 3rd of November, really late on. And actually, this series running very late into the year this year, the latest it's ever run since I've been involved. Of course, I started off 2 years ago at this very race, being involved in this series. But the weekend before, Randy, this is what makes their Indianapolis 500 unique in my view. They have a 3-hour qualifying session. They're doing it properly. And if they have more entries than they should do, I think they might just do bump day.
What is this? Hold on, what was the International Sim Racing Open Wheel Championship? Is that what this is?
I have a feeling it is a bit of a throwback to that. I mean, that was all my time on iRacing, and for sure.
Yeah, that would have been 2013, 2014. For those who are unaware of what ISOWC was, it was a IndyCar series running these exact cars, running as close to the real-life schedules as possible, including a full format Indianapolis 500 qualifying session, complete with pole day and bump day. And that series was run and organized by one Will Vincent.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that's what they're trying to go for with the Indianapolis 500 qualifying in this series. I'm not sure they are going to have bump day. That one they still need to confirm with the organisers, of course. We won't be bringing you coverage of qualifying, but we will be bringing you coverage of the race along with every single other race for the 2019 Classic IndyCar Series, and some really exciting circuits that we're going to be going to across the course of the year. But of course, back to Barber Motorsports Park. Let's not digress too much as we head towards the halfway stage in this race. Still looking at Joni Kajanen in 4th position. He's pulled out a little bit more of a gap over the driver of Team Wilson, Jamie. It's now about 1.7, 1.8 seconds again, Randy. So while the gap isn't extremely large, it's still not closing as quickly as maybe I'd expected it to.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sort of sitting there, isn't it? I mean, the thing is that this is really the closest fight we have on the racetrack. We have a couple more. This one seems a little bit closer, about a 1.5 second gap between Matt Molnar and Randy Shoemake. This is a battle for 8th and 9th on the racetrack, as we're going to be crossing the half distance threshold here in just a couple of moments. But I mean, this is really, you know, at this phase of the race, this is really what we're dealing with in terms of the gaps. It's sort of a car, and then a couple of seconds up the road, there's another car. You know, there's not a single gap on the racetrack that's under a second. Ian Hoffman's 1.1 within Johnny Garrett. And actually, this might be a driver to watch, because Yan, actually take that back, I thought he qualified better than he did. He qualified 11th, currently runs 12th. Thought he might be screaming through the field as he maybe had qualified a bit quicker than this. But you know, I think Johnny, in terms of, or excuse me, Yan, in terms of pure pace, is about where he's going to be. It said Johnny because Johnny Garrett, just out in front of him, has Johnny in big letters right in the front of the wing, which I saw and warped my mind.
Well, at least we know who's who when it comes to Johnny Garrett. We can spot him out on the tracks and easily with Johnny written across the rear wing, and I think that's quite nice. So, of course, we see the Logical Vortex guys. They've all got the personalized rear wings, all got the different colors as well, which we can use to identify their cars. And that is quite a big thing with teams, is they do make each driver's car unique.
Johnny!
Of course, there you go, there's Johnny. And, of course, not only does it make it easier for us commentators to work out who's who, but it also means that you at home can work out who's who much easier, because if you've got 2 or 3 cars all looking very similar, all teammates, you need to know which one's which, Randy, especially if they're all in a battle together.
Yeah, I mean, this was a little bit more difficult in this series in the past, especially back when they ran, this series went full classic IndyCar, where they were not only running these older cars, they were actually running classic paint schemes. And if I recall correctly, it was Lucas LaVille and Robert Grosser who were teammates running Ganassi-style Target paint schemes, and those cars were identical. You want to talk about 2 liveries that were hard to pick out. Those are difficult. The Vortex guys, I mean, there's about, I mean, we have 25 cars that started, and about 40 of the drivers are Vortex cars. So I mean, they can be a little bit difficult as well to pick out, but you are right, they do a good job. And actually, Johnny Garrett ahead of Jan Hoffman makes a mistake going towards the end of the last half of the lap here, so we might actually have a fight for position here on our hands, as Hoffman is tucked right underneath the rear wing of Johnny Garrett.
And I've also noticed that on my timing screens, Randy Shoemake and Matt Molnar have closed up. Matt Molnar had a very slow lap last time around, 2.5 slower than that of Randy Shoemake. But Jan Hoffman, he's looking to the outside as he heads himself through turn number 2 and 3. Over the hill he goes and down towards the hairpin. This is going to be one of his best places to try and put a move in, but he's not going to be close enough this time. So it looks as though for Jan Hoffman, he's still going to be looking as they head into the corkscrew. Not a place where you want to be going side by side is the corkscrew. A very difficult section of the course here, Randy. And I think for Jan Hoffman, this lap is going to be all about closing the gap. The next one is going to be about making a move.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, as he's going to stay as close as he can through this left-right, going to be working the slipstream. No way to make a move down in towards this next bit of racetrack. We saw some moves get thrown down here yesterday in the Porsche Esports Super Cup, but really not much of a move with these high downforce cars, and that's really the big thing. GT cars, you can get a little bit more aggressive with one another, and we saw, you know, a couple spots on the racetrack, Jack, kind of get used for passes that we haven't seen get used today. Here it's really just down in the hairpin being the only place you can actually make something stick with these Indy cars.
Yeah, and I think if you're brave enough, you could into that last section, that last long right-hander of the course, but it's not somewhere you probably want to be trying unless you know that you can get the move done. As we head ourselves down into the hairpin once again, Jan Hoffman was still running on board with him as we go to a little bit of a panoramic shot. Nice to see the cars driving through. Nice inside line taken by Johnny Garrett there in the 68, blocking off any move that Jan Hoffman was trying to make. So once again, he's got to regroup himself and try and do it next time around, almost losing it over the curbs. 4 wheels on the curb that time, Randy. And I have a feeling that his left 2 tires were actually on the grass.
Yeah, I think just a little bit, but he's really hounding Johnny Garrett now as they work their way through up towards, again, this difficult sector on the racetrack that it's been a while we've seen anyone make a mistake there, but it was pretty frequent earlier on. The other fight we had going on, by the way, with Matt Molnar has seemed to settle itself out, as this fight still remains the closest one, and Jan Hoffman trying everything he can to bring that gap back down and maybe make something of this. As it's important to remember, we're only about 6 or 7 laps out from the last pit stop cycle opening here, Jack. So So, I mean, this is relevant. If Yan can really pressure here, Johnny, you know, maybe one of them comes down pit road a little bit early for some off strategy. Let's see what happens as Jan seems to have a run down into the hairpin.
He does. He's going to go down to the inside into the hairpin. He's looking, still looking. Very tight line there from the 05. Looks as though Johnny Garrett still had the pace through the corner. Still riding on board with Jan Hoffman in the Vortex Sim Racing car. Into the corkscrew they head to the right-hander. Really hit that curb on the left-hand side. Lovely executed from Jan Hoffman that time. Not too much curb. Didn't unsettle the car, but he's still not close enough, Randy. I think Johnny Garrett is doing an amazing defense here. And because we've seen them so close on lap times recently, I'm not sure whether Jan Hoffman's got the pace to get past, but we could see the gap really close now as Johnny Garrett does go wide through turn number 12 into 14 and 15 they head. He's still not close enough.
Yeah, still not close enough. A little bit of a lockup from Johnny out in front. And Yan's going to run a slightly wider line off the final corner. That should give him a run. He's going to duck out of the slipstream a little bit early, maybe not wanting to make a move down here in turn 1, but I think he could have closed that gap up regardless. In towards turn 2, Yan has been quicker through the entry this part of the corner, whereas Johnny has not had the run off the, has had the run off the corner. This time it goes the opposite. Yan might have a move down at the hairpin.
He's going to go to the outside of the racetrack. Not usually where you'd see a move done around the outside here at the hairpin. Garrett's going to get a slightly better run off the inside. So for the driver of Jan Hoffman, it's all about that run down towards
he's got it.
The corkscrew, and he has got it. So Jan Hoffman's going to move himself up. Now he's got to cement that position. Really riding the curbs, really pushing that 05 to the limit. 11th position there for Hoffman, and a nicely executed move.
You're going to actually rewind and go on board with Johnny Garrett, because I think what happened here is actually pretty typical coming through the hairpin. He's going to hold this tight corner, but watch for him to get a bite of oversteer. Actually, no, he actually holds it relatively nice. I was expecting to see some wheel spin there from that 68 car, but still can't be as aggressive on the throttle, and that's what allows Jan Hoffman to pick that spot up. Such a difficult part of the racetrack trying to defend down there, Jack, at the hairpin, because while the inside is the preferred line, it's got some bumps down there, and it's very tight trying to keep it in. So if you don't get it absolutely perfect, there's a driver on your outside. They can really keep that momentum up and swing around the outside of you, just like we saw Hoffman do.
And I think for Jan Hoffman, that was sort of a move that we don't usually see at the outside of the hairpin, as Johnny Garrett loses the rear end. And what you were saying last time around that you thought he got oversteer and he didn't, well, I think that's called the commentator's curse, Randy, because he's just got quite a big amount of oversteer. He is back running again, not too much damage for Johnny Garrett. He has lost about 5 seconds, though. He's still got 10 seconds back to Carlson Brodvey down in 13th position, so he does hold 12th place.
Yeah, so no issues there. In terms of positions lost, keeping an eye on your race lead, because we haven't talked about them in quite a while. Gap between Matt Cook and Joshua Chin, 8.3 seconds. So we talked about the fact it was about 6 seconds when they came down on pit road. It's been about 15 or so laps since that pit stop sequence happened, and well, Josh has basically just kept the pressure up. We saw him maybe take a slightly lighter fuel load, and he's just taken full advantage. I mean, the driver of the 93 car is just gone.
He has. He's just driven off into the distance. Not much Matt Cook do in response. Last time around, he was almost a second slower there, Randy. So I wonder whether he is starting to struggle with traffic. Of course, we just saw him navigating himself around Ronnie Peterson through the hairpin. Already pulled quite a considerable gap over Ronnie Peterson, which shows how much faster that these guys up at the front of the field are running than the mid-pack. But it's still nothing that he can answer for. Gap is going to be 9 seconds almost at the conclusion of the 53rd lap.
Yeah, I mean, so it's really, I mean, all in this 93 car. I'd say at this point the race is decided unless Josh makes a mistake or gets caught up in something.
Nah, don't say that.
Well, I said it.
Yeah. Oh, well.
He does have some wing damage.
He does have some wing damage. I just spotted that at the exact time you said it. So for Josh Chin, maybe he had a few issues with the back markers. You should be able to see it on the right-hand side of your screens, ladies and gentlemen. You can see where there's just a little bit of a step in the front wing. That's going to be damage for Josh Chin, so could be hurting him. As I say that, he's still running quick lap times. Still the fastest car out on the circuit, so clearly not making that much of an effect.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, just a little bit of, you know, it is definitely tweaked, but there's, you know, not every, there is sort of let's say, levels of the sort of damage you can do to the wing, I guess. You know, light contact will take a little bit of downforce off, could make the car push a little bit, which even as hot as it is today, you may even want a little bit of push dialed into these cars, Jack, because we've seen from memory, mostly just oversteer incidents for most drivers. A couple times towards the tail of the lap, we've seen 1 or 2 drivers push a little bit wide. But, you know, on a track like this, when it's hot, when you're struggling with rear traction the way everyone is, a little bit of push may not be a bad thing.
And of course, it is important for these drivers to use those in-car tools. We can't have an IndyCar race and not talk about the in-car tools in these cars. Weight jackers aren't going to be something you want to be running today. You don't want to be adjusting them because that actually is going to adjust the rear ride height and play with the feel of the car. But those anti-roll bars, Randy, they can tighten the loose in the car. So as you actually run into a stint, we could see some of these drivers maybe loosening up the rear of the car a little bit or tightening it depending on what the tire wear is doing.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be one of those things that you do, and you do that in all the cars that have those variable roll bars on the iRacing service. All the Indy cars have those. The V8 supercars and actually have the same situation. There's also actually a really cool camera shot saw from the real world V8 supercars race this past weekend. I can't remember the track. It's the super short circuit they run, but the drivers during the race were actually, you know, they were changing front and rear roll bars the entire lap, and they were almost as active on the rear the roll bar adjustments as they were on the actual as they were on the gear stick and everything, and it was really fun to watch. But that is definitely something you will work in this on the iRacing service. You will work roll bars front and rear. Oh, and just so we say that, we talked about Josh Chin having issues and the fact that he pretty much had this sorted. Self spin for the 93. Where's Matt Cook?
Matt Cook is just exiting the hairpin, so at the moment Josh Chin has held the lead, but he's had his advantage cut from 9 seconds down to 1, and it's still closing 6/10 now. All of a sudden, Matt Cook is back in with a contention of maybe taking a bit more of an advantage in this race, a bit more of an advantage in this championship. And for Josh Chin, it's going to be a lap before his tires are back down to a temperature, the running temperature. They're going to be overheating because he's had to try and get himself back going. Josh Chin, he's made that mistake, Randy. I knew it was going to happen.
You knew it was going to happen? Did I curse him by saying that he had this one? See, it was mind games, Jack. You thought I was calling the race over. I knew that if I said that, Josh would make a mistake.
I mean, if you ride on board with Josh, you can clearly see written just in front of him is the words #blame Randy.
Oh, big bite of oversteer.
Yeah, big bite of oversteer. So for Josh Chin, he has got written on his car, blame Randy. You can see it there on your screens now, ladies and gentlemen, just so below the race spot logos, which of course do make you 3/10 faster. So yes, I think that slogan really coming true today.
I don't think it's a good advertisement for the race spot logos make you faster a lap after he just spun.
I mean, it's true though.
Yeah. Yes, it's arguable.
It is. Yeah, it is arguable. Of course, this lead battle still sitting at 0.8 of a second. Josh Chin lost 7 seconds on that spin. That was how much slower he was than Matt Cook on that lap. I think had Matt Cook had any traffic in his way, maybe we wouldn't now be seeing this battle for the lead. Replay up on your screens. Randy, is this going to be a replay of the incident?
Yeah, I'm actually curious to see what happened to Josh. I want to know if it was, you know, was it just a throttle application thing, or did he actually find a bump wrong as that gap has sort of stabilized a little bit? But let's see what happens. Lap car in front kind of takes an odd line, and he just spins up the tires.
Yeah, looks as though the 9,000 RPM kill switch once again bites the leader, and it's not something we've seen so far this year, especially this season. A lot of the drivers seem to have finally got a hang of controlling those higher revs in lower gears, which really do spin up the tires on this car. Of course, as I said earlier on, no driving aids in this car, only the in-car tools, no traction control, no ABS, no stability control, not like we see on the GTE cars that we've had more recently come into motorsport, where they've got 2 traction control systems. None of that on these Indy cars, not even power steering to assist these drivers. So for Josh Chin, clearly finding out where these cars bite, and it wouldn't be the first time, and I can't see it being the last that we see that, even here today.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that one. I am curious, though, after that mistake, is when is Josh going to come down pit road? It's actually a car off in front of them. That was Andrew Wood in the 32. Let's see what happened to him, because he was way off in the grass near pit entry.
And that's the driver currently sitting in 7th position in the race. Just like Classic Motorsports. So he heads himself through 12 turns number 12 and 13, all looking pretty good so far. This is obviously where he hit trouble. Yeah, it's just a little bit too much speed into the right-hander, and he couldn't get the car stopped in time. Didn't go down to pit road. He decided to jump himself across the gravel and rejoin the racing surface. So for Andrew Wood, he has rejoined the race now, but he is a little bit further down, losing around 4 seconds on that lap.
I actually think if I was him, I may have just cut down pit road there and just said, oh, well. But yeah, an interesting decision. I am interested, though, to see if Josh Chin will come down pit road a little bit early after the incident with his tires, because pit window is now pretty much open.
It is. It's pretty close if you pit at this in the race. 32 laps still remaining after this one, so you are going to be running a full stint. These drivers only on 25, 26 laps into their stint so far. So it just looks like they are going to do what they did in the first stint here, Randy. Everyone running as long as possible into this second stint to get that shortest possible final pit stop. But then you've got to be careful that the time to change the tyres isn't longer than the time to fuel the car. Because if it is, you could start seeing problems where the drivers actually extend their pit stops unnecessarily if they run a little bit too long.
Yeah, you are right, and that's one of the things you try to optimize as best you can. You want the fuel done with the tires at the same time. With that said, Jack, I don't think that's going to be a problem here today, because that's usually only crops up when you're talking about a very, very short fill to get to the end of the race. Here, I mean, you're basically filling the car up. Even if you come down pit road at the latest, that I believe the latest anyone ran was 32 laps. So we should be expecting cars lap 64, lap 65 at the absolute latest. You're still talking 25 laps in fuel, nearly 3/4 of a tank. I don't think that's going to be a problem.
No, I don't think it is either. I think the pit stop times are going to be pretty similar as to what they are, or what they were in the first stop. We have seen a couple of drivers decide that now is the time to take their second stop. Jan Hoffman's already done it in the 05. Franz Josef Sturm, actually for Josef Sturm, in the number 34, Randy, I think he's had an issue because he's taken the toe. He hasn't got a rear wing.
Yeah, that's generally a problem. We'll see if we can get a replay of this. Would have happened on his lap 57, but it would have been a big incident, so we'll keep this replay up to see what exactly befell the driver of the 34.
And I believe it was as he headed over the top of the hill, he lost the rear end, snapped it through the right, big contact with the Armco, and the rear wing does its disappearing act, and that is race over for Franz Josef Sturm. No fast repair, meaning that his day is done. We're going to ride on board with the number 34.
Watch the revs.
To see, yeah, just that. Watch these revs as he heads over the top. Yeah, he hit the rev limit as he headed over the top, spun up those rear wheels, and that's day ended, even in 4th gear.
Yeah, that's a classic mistake to make here at Barber. This is actually one of the first tracks I ever did league racing in way back. That would have been the Tort Freak Touring Car Series with the Cadillac and the V8 Supercar. I was driving the V8 Supercar, and going up and over the hill, that can be in cars that struggle with rear traction, the rear end gets light, and it's not uncommon to spool up those rear tires really, really fast, and that's exactly what happened there to Franz Josef Sturm. Very unfortunate mistake, but it's sort of a classic struggle here at Barber that you will usually see in these sorts of cars befall a handful of people. As the cars have sort of gotten updated and a little bit more modern, the Indy cars, of course, have much better rear suspension designs than this IR05 did. Especially keep in mind, this car, when it was initially designed for real world racing, it was never even supposed to run on road courses. It was built for ovals only. So those sorts of parts of the racetrack really were difficult for them.
And I believe it was when the Indycar Racing League and Champ Car combined. That was when this car was modified to run on road courses.
Yep, you're learning. That
yes.
was way back.
I can remember things when I was about 6 years old. Yes.
Yep, back when the split came back together. And it's one of those things, a lot of people really weren't fans of this car, but I think this IR05 I think it was a car that was necessary at the right time when American Open Wheel Racing came back together. It put on some good shows on the road courses. It adapted the road courses decently okay, and it put on some very entertaining Indianapolis 500s with some iconic moments to provide in its own right.
And of course, it wasn't just American open wheel racing we saw combine in recent years. Of course, sports car racing has also combined back into one, but I'm not going to open my opinions on the early years of that combination because it's not particularly an interesting or happy opinion of mine, I must admit. But I think for IndyCar, yeah, I know, I don't like DPs. But I think for IndyCar, having that reuniting of the IndyCar and the IndyCar Racing League and Champ Car really was that second coming for the series, and it's been on a massive up ever since. Timo Sinyemi on the pit lane, and I think that was proven this year. Obviously, Sky Sports getting rights to broadcast it in the UK, so it's come to more and more people, and a lot more people are having their eyes open to this discipline of motorsport, which a lot of people probably have never seen before. Josh Ginn, fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 6.666.
Yeah, he's kind of fast. He's going really quick. Is Josh, and so yeah, now the question's just got to be, when are they going to come down pit road? So Josh, after having that incident, seems to just be pushing the fuel as late as he can once again, and obviously still putting down some quick lap times. But you're right, it's good to see IndyCar start growing once again. The split definitely wasn't good for the sport, you know, and it was sort of, you know, had to pick two evils. A lot of people prefer Champ Car, but that got very expensive very quickly, and I think sort of outgrew itself, and the finances just didn't make sense for that series after a number of years. I think IndyCar's gotten itself into a very good situation, though. A lot of people like the design of this new IndyCar, just the aesthetics of it kind of are something people really enjoy in the IR18. And it's good to see the series growing once again, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the years hold, especially with the talks of new teams coming in and potentially new manufacturers, and if Alonso's going to go racing full time. Of course, he just tested a McLaren IndyCar at Texas, so.
And of course, as we see, Yoni Kylan and Robert Grosser have come down onto the pit lane. This year, a new team to the IndyCar series with Dragon Speed, as a team run by Henrik Hedman, the Swedish businessman. Quite originally started off in sports car racing in Europe, moved into the World Endurance Championship, now running the British driver of Ben Hanley in the IndyCar series. They are still getting themselves introduced to that discipline of racing as Matt Molnar now brings himself down onto the pit lane. So we starting to see the pit stops for the top runners in this event, and they are on the 32nd lap, or 32nd lap of their stint, is Josh Ginn, Matt Cook, and Lucas Laville. So Josh Ginn,
spoiler
he's
alert,
going to pit
pitting
this time. So the leader pits, Matt Cook pits. Be interesting to see if Lucas Laville also follows them in. So it's all going to be very similar strategy for the top three, I think. No, Lucas Laville going to go one longer on this stint. Not that it's going to make much difference. He's still 10 seconds behind Josh Ginn. But eyes back to the front of the field. Josh Ginn and Matt Cook both on pit lane at the same time. This is now where the race gets exciting.
We did see Matt have that slightly longer pit stop, and after that kind of issue for Josh, I think Matt's sort of in the window of maybe can take advantage of this if he can have a short fill. Josh is already off the jacks, car is down, both getting gas. Matt is rolling, and he's going to take the spot away from Josh.
That, for the driver of Matt Cook, was a stop 3 seconds quicker.
Oh, and he immediately gets contact. Oh,
and there's
no.
contact. Oh, as Matt Cook takes the lead. It's taken away from him almost immediately by Hans Bittinen, riding on board with Matt Cook as he exits the pit lane. He gets out first, off the pit limiter he goes, and you'll just see on the right-hand side of your screens, here comes Hans Bittinen. There's the slight contact, and Matt Cook he's still running, but he's lost a lot of time, and he's down in third place.
Gonna watch this on board with Josh Ginn. We usually don't like showing these bits on pit road where the cars face through each other, which everyone knows is something that happens in the sim, but see Josh have the issue there and just locks it up for Bittinen. I think maybe saw those cars coming off pit road and panicked a little bit, and my oh my, I remember having a fight with Matt Cook at Road America where I got taken out by a lapper, and well, it just happened to Matt Cook. So man, that is, wow, talk about, we think we're just about to get excited, Jack, over a fight for the race lead. Have to see Josh really push to try to, you know, take it back from Matt, and then in the blink of an eye, that's how quickly things change.
It just shows that everything can happen in the split second. We saw it at round one in Interlagos for Josh Ginn as he exited the pits. The pits haven't been his problem today. It seems to be getting down on the power as he comes out of this very corner, out of the hairpin. For Matt Cook, he's having incidents with back markers. I wonder whether Hans Bittinen will pick up a post-race penalty for that one. He's made his final pit stop, so he's in and out again. Not sure what damage was sustained on the number 8 machine, but everything looks pretty clean actually for him.
Yeah, I think luckily, I mean, I think for both drivers, there's a relatively light tap. I don't think there should be any damage. I haven't seen any damage onto Max Cook's car. If there would be, it'd be side pod damage, and typically that only really hurts you on the super high-speed racetracks like the ovals. But man, oh man, that was, yeah, and as he works his way through the side of the car that was hit, I don't see anything on that number 6 car, so I think both cars should be fine. But man, oh man, Matt Cook is not going to be happy, I don't think. You know, he's still 2 seconds back and make something of this. But there's such a big difference between even being just out in front of someone here at this racetrack, as difficult as it has been to pass, and being 2 seconds back. Now he has to somehow rein in the car. He has to bring in a 2-second gap over the car that's been quickest this whole race thus far and get by.
I mean, you can tell he's definitely pushing at this stage in the race as he's just come out of the pit lane. He's just locked that front left tire as he headed into the hairpin, just showing that he's really trying to push that braking zone as late as possible into that corner. With 23 laps still remaining after this one, there's still time for Matt Cook to get that back. 2 seconds, 2.2 seconds split him and Josh Chen at the front of the field. 3.5 seconds actually back to Lucas Laville. Laville had a 9.1 second pit stop. Very fast pit stop for the Frenchman, and that's all of a sudden brought him potentially back into contention to battle for these positions.
Yeah, they're covered within about 6 seconds right now, are these top 3, as the Vortex driver going to work off that final corner. And let's see, how did that gap actually change? Josh Chen opens up 2/10 over Matt Cook, so that's out to 2.2 seconds. And actually, Lucas Laville, quickest of your top 3 last trip around. So we might see a fight here if Lucas can keep this pace up, but it was only about 1/10 of a second that he is quicker than Josh Chen, a little bit quicker than that over Matt Cook. We might see a fight for second, but I don't think the 2 has the speed to get to the 93.
We do have a closing battle out on the racetrack. Yami and Robert Grosser, the 2 Vortex Sim Racing teammates, are currently engrossed in a battle for 5th position. Last time around, Grosser was about 1/10 of a second quicker than Yami. The Finnish driver currently sitting in 5th, been looking strong all at race long. This time around, once again, Grosser is quicker by just over 1/10. So slowly closing the gap is the German, the 3-time champion in the Classic IndyCar Series, Robert Grosser, but I'm not sure how much he's going to be able to close. And of course, battling with your teammate is always a bit of a touchy subject because you don't want to make contact.
No, you definitely don't. You want to be as nice as you can with each other as they work. And just, you know, talking about the fact that we've seen such a big gap here amongst the top 5. Here's your graphic with the top 5 cars on the racetrack. 93, the 6, and the 2 that you see down towards the lower end of the graphic at the moment. They run 1st, 2nd, 3rd. Fight for 4th and 5th we're watching, or excuse me, 5th and 6th we're watching on screen here. I don't have the 77 on here. Let's see if I can get him added of Johan Kajanen. So we'll turn this into a top 6 graphic here, as the 77 car runs in that 4th position.
So we can see how stout this top 6 is over the racetrack. Of course, 47, 48 seconds splitting them is quite a considerable amount of time that they have been split by, as we see these 2 Vortex Sim Racing cars head themselves across the stripe to the start, the 69th lap of this event. Slowly closing towards that 90-lap marker. And I think for the drivers now in this final run into the flag, this is where it gets important now, Randy, because it's all to play for. They've done that final stop. They're on that final set of tyres. They know that this is what's going to bring them to the checkered flag, and now they can push.
Yeah, that's going to be the thing to watch. Matt Cook actually, I think, quick the last trip around the racetrack, but I take that back. It was the previous lap he was fast. This time through, he lost a couple of tenths. So the gap for the top couple cars ebbing and flowing. It was a 10th to 2 laps ago in favor of Josh, 10th and a half in favor of Matt last trip, and this previous time, just when they came through, at 2/10 in favor of Josh. So trading lap times are your top 2, and that's not what what the 6 car of Matt Cook wants to be seeing, especially with a charging Lucas Laville behind. A gap now under 5 seconds, 1st to 3rd.
And looking at the battle for 5th position out on the circuit, Timo Yami and Robert Grosser, they have closed even more. The gap currently, it was down to around half a second. It's now sat at about 8/10 of a second between the 2. So Yami gaining a little bit more back through the latter half of the circuit. 9/10 of a second between the 2 now, actually. Pretty close on lap times last time around, Randy. Both doing 1:07.7s. So it looks as though this is another one of these cases where they seem to be doing pretty close lap times. They're close on the circuit, but not sure the pace is there to make an overtake.
Yeah, I mean, they're just sort of swapping back and forth, aren't they, in terms of the lap times? So maybe a bit of a struggle between these two and maybe a bit of a trade lap times back and forth, and especially them being teammates. I think that, in all honesty, if the pace is equal enough, I don't think Robert's probably going to go too aggressive on this. He'll probably, you know, not to say that there's team orders in effect or anything like that, but I think Robert will just be a little bit calmer, cooler, and more collected rather than trying to push to get by his teammate. I'm really interested in this fight, though, the fight for second and third. Last handful of laps for Lucas Laville. He reeled in 2 laps ago a full half a second, 0.2 of a second the lap previous. Matt Cook was a 10th quicker the last trip around the racetrack, but the 2 is bringing that 6 down and in. If he can maintain that 2 to 3, or 0.2 to even half a second per lap sort of window, I think he has the pace to bring in Matt.
And I mean, I'm looking at the lap times from last time around. Josh Chin was half a second quicker than Matt Cook, so that gap at the front of the field starting to pull out even more. But for Lucas Laville, he's slowly closing in on Matt Cook. Last time around, he was a little bit slower. This time around, his lap time, again, sitting at about a 10th slower than Matt Cook. So I think traffic is going to have to play into this one, Randy, to try and close down this gap.
Yeah, you are right. And actually, let's take a quick peek to see what the actual traffic situation is like out there on track. Is we see Matt Cook. He's that 6 car going down through the hairpin. There's not a lot of traffic out ahead of that 6 car. You see the 05 car going down through the corkscrew. That's currently ahead of Josh Chin as well. But besides that, they have basically, the entire back half of the circuit is barren of race cars. So if you are Lucas Laville, that's going to be a sort of disaster situation from you. You seem to maybe have the pace advantage on the with a little bit of traffic, and you just clean track out in front of you in the 6.
I mean, he's currently keeping it static at around 2.8 seconds, the gap between them. It just seems to be he's losing time to Josh Chin up at the front of the field. But the story's the same for Matt Cook. Josh Chin, all of a sudden, after that mistake that he had coming through the hairpin, he's found his groove again. We've got a car stopped. Johnny Garrett in 13th position. He's off just after the tunnel section of the circuit, Randy. Looks as though the damage is pretty non-existent on his machine. There's a little bit to the front right, but I wonder what's happened there. Replay, let's have a look.
Let's see, you see him working down through the corkscrew. We're about a third of a lap away from where this incident actually takes place. Through the quick S's, no issue there. Maybe up through here, though. This is the scary part of the racetrack where you don't want to have an issue. And you know what I think he did? I think he actually, and I want to get another kind of on board with this. I want to do, we have a camera that's slightly elevated. I think he hooked these left tires right over the curb on the left-hand side, and that sort of spat the car offline. It didn't give him a big bite of oversteer, but watch the left-hand side. That sort of grabs the car, prevents him from getting turned in here, and that causes him to push and just put those 2 tires out onto the grass. And you are right, very light tap of the wall, but besides a little bit of damage on that right corner of the wing, I don't think that car should be overly affected.
And it was just a case of that little bit of a hook of that left-hand side. It spun the car around. He didn't quite get the apex on the inside as he headed through 13. That was what I spotted that maybe pushed him wide. Wasn't able to scrub off enough speed as we head back to looking at Lucas Laville in 3rd position, running a little bit wide out of turn number 1 himself. No curb there to bite for him. Although we are going to go back and have a look at this battle for 5th position between Team Racing Jamie and Robert Grosser, the 43 and the 3. Looking at the 3-time champ as he heads himself through the S's up towards the tunnel S's of the course. And up the hill he will go. This is where Johnny Garrett had his issues just a couple of laps ago. All clean for the Vortex drivers. However, there is a car on the wall on the inside, and that's Hans Pitkanen, the last driver in the top 10. And he's got that slight issue once again of not having a rear wing, Randy.
Yeah, these cars don't tend to work very well without the rear wings. Let's see what happened to Hans Pitkanen, though. Very same sector on the racetrack, and doesn't look like he collects that curb, but he just gets the oversteer up and over the crest, which we've seen a couple of times. Luckily for him, that we've actually seen the drivers making mistakes there tonight, Jack. Be relatively lucky in the sense, I mean, he lost the rear wing, but it was still an overall relatively light contact. He's still out there without a wing, by the way, so that car is going to be interesting to drive.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a meatball flag from the organisers at some point. Because of the fact he doesn't have that rear downforce. Either that or he's going to put it in a wall or something. I'm not quite sure. So for Hans Pitkanen, he is back underway. However, his pace is going to be heavily hindered by that incident as he headed through turn number 13. And this is the same section of the course that the two Vortex drivers are currently heading themselves through in the battle for 5th position between the two. And so far, looks as though it's Inyemi, it's still pretty stagnant between the two. The gap's still around 7/10 of a second, and it's not coming down very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of slowly favored Robert Grosser in this fight, hasn't it? But, you know, of course, a slight favoritism towards Grosser is a huge favoritism towards Inyemi, because that means he can't catch him, and that means he can't get by.
Now, and I think between the two, Robert Grosser and Team Inyemi, two people who have had a very long history with the Classic IndyCar Series. Of course, Robert, the one driver in the Classic IndyCar Series history who has started every single race that's ever been competed, all 50 of them. Today, obviously, being the 50th race in the series history, the same day that Formula One is celebrating its 1000th race in its history. So, a pretty momentous day for motorsport today. And, of course, the Chinese Grand Prix happening at the same time here as the Grand Prix of Alabama, the Barber Motorsports Park. So these two drivers, they once again head themselves up to this final section of the course. It's down to about half a second now, 0.4 of a second. So this time around, Team Inyemi has lost some time, and he's actually lost it through the S's by the looks of things. Yeah, not a great run there for the 43, and that's going to allow Robert Grosser to really start putting the pressure on his teammate. But maybe Inyemi already feeling the pressure. Let's check out the lap gaps, and you can see that Grosser has been quick. The last lap actually wasn't the big one. It was a few laps ago on lap number 72 that Grosser was able to reel in 0.4 of a second over that teammate out in front of him. Last time through was about a 10th, but he's just about there as Robert Grosser as Josh Chin sets down another fastest lap of the race at a 1:06.595. You can tell that man at the front of the field is trying, not only because he's setting fastest laps of the race, but also because his lead is back out to 4.1 seconds. So for Josh Chin, he is starting to extend that lead again that he once had before his mistake at the hairpin. He's just got to be careful, though, because he gets further and further into the stint. The rear end of the car is going to get that little bit lighter due to the fact that there's not going to be much fuel in the car. The tyres are going to get worn, so the traction is going to be that little bit harder to find, especially out of these slow corners. Yeah, you're right. It's going to be a little bit difficult, isn't it? As Grosser and Inyemi, you see the onboard there. We're both running slightly different lines through that sort of second to last corner as they work down the front straightaway once again, approaching 10 laps to go. And actually, I think it's been a good trip around the racetrack for Timo this last time. He's opened that gap up to where it's closer now to a full second once again. So Robert Grosser losing a little bit of ground. And of course, you talk about the Chinese Grand Prix in real life. Let's be real, Jack. I think everyone here, including most of the people participating in this race, at the moment this race is over, are going to be quickly going to their television screens to watch the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach, as that's going to be getting started about 30 minutes after this race ends. Yeah, of course, this isn't the only IndyCar action that you can find on today. Of course, as you just said, the real world going to Long Beach just a week after their trip to Birmingham, Alabama, to the Barber Motorsports Park. Josh Chin, he's dropped down the timing screens. No, he's dropped down to third. I think it's happened at the same corner. Oh no, Josh. Through turns 2 and 3, he looks clean. Through turn 4 is fine. Is it the same mistake at the hairpin? Yes, it is. Oh, no. Josh Chin. You'd think after making the mistake once, you wouldn't make it a second time. But he's gone and done it. With 12 laps remaining, it isn't all off the cards that he could get this back, because he's only 3.8 seconds behind Matt Cook. But all of a sudden, what was looking like a dominating win for Josh Chin has now put him on the last step of the podium. Yeah, it has, and he has this lap traffic to deal with of Hans, who doesn't have a rear wing, who he's out there just sort of limping around. I think he doesn't want to come down pit road, when I think it'd actually be quicker if he actually were to come down pit road and just get the damage repaired than it would be to limp like this around to the end of the race. But for Josh, you have to wonder here. I mean, this is, you know, to make that mistake twice in the race is, a little bit, I don't want to say inexcusable, but he's out there setting fastest laps when he's got a nice, comfortable gap. He did that when he made the first mistake as well, when he was nearly 7 seconds out in front. You know, you have to kind of ask the question, is that driver, that 93 car, just pushing too hard when he's already got the margin he needs to probably hold on to the win? He is gaining time on the cars ahead by the looks of things, but I'm not sure it's be enough. he's got to be gaining probably, I think, at least half a second a lap on Matt Cook, because not only has he got to close that gap, he's also got to get past Lucas Laville for second position. So for Josh Chin, his day is not quite over yet. He could still see himself on victory lane, but it's going to be that whole lot harder as we head into these final stages. That time around, he was slower than the two drivers ahead of him. So I think for Josh Chin, his tyres aren't quite back to the pressures and temperatures they need to be for them to be in the optimal running place.
Yeah, you're right. And he's only going to have 11 laps to get this job done. He's within a second of Lucas Laville, though, so maybe something happening there. But, Jack, I have to ask you, as frequently as Josh Chin is throwing races, I almost wonder if he has some skins up for grabs on let's say, we'll call it iRacing gambling website .uk, because why not?
I'm not sure we're allowed to solicit gambling, are we?
Well, I'm not soliciting gambling. This is actually a joke to the Counter-Strike scene.
Ah, yeah, no, okay, it's fine. You never know. I mean, if anyone wants any...
Yeah, the world of iRacing gambling is so vast.
Yeah, we of course don't encourage gambling here at RaceBot TV, and we don't want you to go and do it. But of course, I feel like the odds at the moment for Josh Chin crashing each race seem pretty high. He's managed it in both road courses of the year so far, and we've only had 2. So 3 rounds into the championship, and Josh Chin has already thrown away 2 wins.
Yeah, he's crashed out of the lead, or he's had incidents out of the lead in 2 rounds. If I remember right, I think his gap at Brazil wasn't as large, so he was pushing a little bit harder, but he still was relatively comfortably out in front. But man, oh man.
I mean, last time around, he gained 3/10 of a sec, or just about 2/10 of a second on Lucas Laville, 4/10 of a second on Matt Cook. So he has found a groove again, but I'm not sure whether it's too little, too late. He's now within 4/10 of Lucas Laville, so expect a pass, or at least attempt a pass in the next couple of laps between the two, as they head themselves through 12 and 13 into 14 across the bridge. They go wide, runs Josh Chin. So Josh Chin, you can tell, pushing, but that shouldn't scrub off too much of his lap time. Couple of tenths at most. He's straight back to gaining time. The gap's half a second as they cross the line. And once again, he goes faster than the 2 guys ahead of him. So Josh Chin back in the mindset that he needs to be to win this race.
Yeah, but still, it's more than a state of mind to be able to reel this in. It's just a question of possibility. I think second, very potentially on the cards for Josh, as he's right on the rear end of Lucas Laville. But I think the worst thing is you don't want to push too hard at the same time, Jack, even going for second. Yeah, you want to pick that second spot up if you can, but we've already seen Josh go this full race distance, pushing as hard as he can and throw away the potential for that race win. The last thing you want to do is kill any hope you have for second by making that same mistake you've already made twice in this final 10 laps.
And you never know, 3 times the charm, and for Josh Chin, it probably isn't going to be the charm that he wanted today. If it does happen again, he's got to survive 8 more circuits of this track. Just over, it's going to be about just under probably 30 kilometers left in this race as they head themselves across the timing stripe once more. The gap's down by 2/10 of a second between himself and Lucas Laville. Lap times this time around, he is quicker than the 2 guys ahead of him, but Matt Cook doing an 0.68, Laville doing an 0.69, and Chin doing an 0.67. They're very close on lap times. This time, Josh Chin looks like he could be close enough to challenge into the hairpin. He was looking to the inside, but he's not close enough to make a move. His next opportunity is into the corkscrew.
And he's actually hurt himself. He was deep on the brakes behind Lucas and sort of had to check up and run an awkward line. I think that cost him a little bit of ground. Down now through the corkscrew for the 83rd time. And we haven't seen many mistakes down at this end of the racetrack, and he's going to be perfect through here as well. But I think he's given up just a little bit of ground to the Vortex car, and that's going to be helping him out. Well, helping Lucas out.
Yeah, it's indeed going to be helping Lucas out. The gap's still 4/10 of a second, so for Josh Chin, we can see that he can close the gap reasonably, but I don't think it's enough. And while he's doing this, this is allowing Matt Cook to try and extend the amount of time that he's going to have at the front of the field to try and hold off Josh Chin. Chin will be able to see Cook just over the brow of the hill as they head into turn number 1. Laville all over the place on the exit of the corner, running a little bit wide through turn number 1. That's going to hinder his move and allow Josh Chin to close the gap even more through 2 and 3 as they head themselves up to the brow of the hill. The flat right-hander over turn number 4. Be very careful on the gear changes there because you can very easily lose the rear end. Once again, Chin going very deep on the brakes into the hairpin there, Randy, but he's not close enough to make a move. He cannot get close enough, and he nearly lost the rear end again.
He's squirming all over the place on the exit of the hairpin down into the corkscrew once again. So there's no question that Josh Chin is pushing, and he may feel that he's now in a situation that he really doesn't have anything to lose, because it's important to keep in mind that it's a 50-second gap pretty much to Jon Kajanen and Timo Isinniemi. Well, really to the 77 car behind. So for Josh, you know, as long as he doesn't throw it into the wall, he doesn't have much to lose, which is why I think he's pushing as hard as he is to pick up the second spot, as it's going to be 6 laps to go at the stripe. The battle, by the way, between Isinniemi and Grosser has stayed stagnant at about a second.
Yeah, so that gap's saying pretty similar between the two drivers as we still ride on board with Josh Chin into turn number 1. New fastest lap of the race for Lucas Laville. So Laville is going to be taking the crown potentially for the fastest lap of the race, showing how much he's pushing to hold on to this second position. It's not quite over yet. While all this is happening, the gap between Josh Chin and Matt Cook is down to less than 3 seconds on the racing surface. We can get the top 3 in one shot for the first time in almost probably 80 laps.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been able to see that as Josh pushes down the corkscrew once again. Still hounding the back of Lucas Laville. Maybe these top 2 sensing a bit of blood in the water to Matt Cook out in front, as these 2 have really picked the pace up, as it's going to be 5 to go here in just a couple of moments time. Josh smacks that curb and a big wiggle over the top of the hill, but he holds it once again.
The rear end really getting out of shape for Josh Chin now as they head across the stripe. 5 more to complete in this 90-lap race here at the Barber Motorsports Park, and as they head across the stripe, they're both, well, actually Josh Chin the slowest out of the 3 that time, squarely through turn number 1 as well. So Josh Chin, that rear end really starting to suffer with how much he's pushing these tyres. They're only 21 laps old, but they're clearly looking like they're about 90 laps old at this point.
Yeah, but remember, they have a spin on him, and as hard as he's been pushing, there's been a number of times that that rear end has just squirmed all over the place and spooled him up. Top 3 in a shot once again, a lap car in the shot as well. Can Josh make something of this down the corkscrew? Maybe a little bit tight, and he's going to actually put 2 off onto the grass, but still is able to hold on to it. So Josh getting away with everything and looking for every bit of real estate that he can. Car sliding all over the place, car pushing all over the place, and he's still just able to barely hold on to it. Up and over the hill again, and Laville makes a mistake.
Oh, my heart was in my mouth for a fraction of the second there. I thought I was going to see Laville slide across the racetrack towards Joshua Chin. He's back going again. Replay up on your screen now, ladies and gentlemen. It just looks as though it's going to be very similar to the incident we saw for Mike Gerlicher in the opening stages of the race. Over the crest of the hill he goes. The rear end gets light. Around he goes. Just avoids that tyre wall on the inside. He is back going again, but he is 5 seconds behind Josh Chin. That is now over. The gap between Matt Cook and Josh Chin there with the front of your field, 1.7 seconds.
Josh is pushing. There's a little bit of lap traffic for Matt Cook. That's going to be actually Joshua Baird who's going to be that lap traffic. Can Josh get around him, or can Josh Chin get around Baird, or is Baird going to hold him up? Down through the corkscrew this time. What's the 23 going to do? They look like they're going to stay in line. Josh is not going to be patient with this move, and he forces it at a sort of awkward point on the racetrack. That was well done for Baird, actually facilitating that pass. But Josh now, that gap down is going to be roughly 2 seconds on the racetrack, and he's going to be hounding it for this last 3 laps. I don't know if he can reel it in. Let's see what the pace difference is going to be like.
And it was 9/10 of a second last time around, about 4/10 of a second. Just 3 laps ago as they come across the timing stripe once more. The lap times are going to differ. Josh Chin, fastest lap of the race. He's going to go 1:06.333. 6/10 faster than Matt Cook. The gap's already down to 1.2 seconds with 3 laps remaining. All of a sudden, it's looking like Josh Chin has still got the chance to win this race and take himself onto victory lane. If it's going to be a move, it's going to come on the final stage of this race. I can't tell you who's going to win this, but at the moment it's Matt Cook who's still in control of this one. 1.3 seconds splitting the two. However, one slight mistake, Josh Chin, he's all over him.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the big thing here. One little mistake. We saw Matt Cook actually lock the tires up at the hairpin this last trip around the racetrack. They worked through the S's and out through the second set of S's. Josh needs to be picture perfect here. Slaps the curb on the left, smacks the curb on the right, able to maintain and really doesn't get any big wiggles. He's all over every inch of racing surface he can find because he knows he has to push for this last 2 laps around this racetrack in Birmingham.
And with 2 laps remaining, the gap is less than 1 second. 0.8 of a second split the two. The lap times last time around, they're going to be pretty similar. Josh Chin running on almost identical lap time to last time. Same for Matt Cook, which means that Josh Chin takes another 0.6 of a second out of Matt Cook ahead of him. And now with the draft, it's going to be that little bit easier to close down the gap. However, the draft is not as important here as it is somewhere else because it's not a high-speed track. This is a downforce track. This is all about the cornering speed, and that seems to be where Josh Chin is potentially making up some of the time. Into the corkscrew they go for the penultimate time, really riding the curves. Matt Cook getting a bad run through the last part of it, I think, and that's going to allow Josh Chin to close it down to 0.6 of a second.
Yeah, lap traffic just kindly moving over, being very sporting. Who actually was that? I believe it was Randy Shoemake. Indeed it was. So Josh Chin now, he's reeled that gap down and in as we come now through the last couple sectors of this penultimate lap. What will the gap be? It was 0.8 of a second at the start of the last one. Maybe a little bit of a wiggle from Matt there. Josh Chin is tucked right underneath their rear wing. White flag this time as they head through turn 1. Josh needs to find 0.4 of a second.
One final lap. It is going to be very close come the end of this race. 0.4 of a second, 0.3 of a second currently split the two as they head themselves over the hill for the final time. Riding on board with Josh Chin. He's got to put it down the inside into the hairpin. He's going to be looking. He's going to go for it. Matt Cook forced to go very deep on the exit. He's going to get a good run off the corner, though. So for Josh Chin, it was a good attempt, but not good enough. Into the corkscrew they head for the final time. 3:10 still splitting each other. They've got Matt Cook. If he gets a bad run, which he's going to, they make contact through the corkscrew for the final time. That's going to allow Matt Cook to extend that gap even more. I think Josh Chin may have just had all the chances that he could have possibly got, and they've been taken away from him. Matt Cook, this is his to lose as they head over the tunnel for the final time, into turn 14, into the final right-hander of this 90-lap race. Matt Cook holding off from Josh Chin, who's going to look for one more time, but he's going to get squirrely on the throttle. Exiting the final corner, Matt Cook going to hold off Josh Chin, taking the win here at Barber Motorsports Park by just 4.5 of a second. Lucas Laville, after his incident in the closing stages of this race, is going to come home in 3rd position, just 8.4 seconds back. I need to catch my breath. That was an absolutely brilliant end to this motor race.
Would you guess Josh Chin was pushing on that last stint? He was trying to find everything he can, and while he comes away with a 2nd spot, and while he might be satisfied knowing that he reeled Matt Cook in as quickly as he did to make that fight for the race lead even possible, you know the Team Chimera driver, that number 93 car, is going to be more than frustrated at himself about this race. I think he'll be downright angry.
I must agree, it was his race to lose, and had it been one more lap, I had a feeling that Josh Chin could have quite easily taken the win. Joni Kynan is finally going to come across the line in 4th. The battle between Timo Isinniemi and Robert Grosser, we lost the coverage on that one in the closing stages, and that's going to end up with Timo Isinniemi coming home in 5th and Robert Grosser in 6th. Everyone looks like they have now finished the Grand Prix of Alabama, so we can show you your final finishing positions. Matt Cook and Aero X Banshee is going to take home the win after Josh Chin hitting trouble twice in this event, and he wins by just 4.5 of a second. Lucas Laville going to round out the podium, and good points haul for the Frenchman in his charge for his first Classic IndyCar Series Championship. Joni Kynan going to come home in 4th. Timo Isinniemi 5th, Robert Grosser 6th, Andrew Wood 7th, Matt Molnar 8th, Randy Shoemake finishes himself off in 9th, and Jan Hoffman for Vortex Sim Racing makes it 4 of their cars in the top 10. Carson Brodby going to come home in 11th, Johnny Garrett in 12th, Joshua Baird in 13th, Hans Pitkin on 14th after his issues with his rear wing. The driver of Andrew Adair Saunders is going to finish 15th. Actually, non-finishers from this point are Andrew Adair Saunders, Franz Josef Stum, the driver of Ronnie Peterson, Andrew Aiken, Caleb Wiki, Mike Gerlicher, Todd Novosad, Logan Simmons, Jos van der Ven, Henry Bennett and Dave Walsh. The two drivers not taking the start, Jonathan Diggs and Zach Svahar. We will step aside for just a moment here on RaceBot TV, and we'll be back with the post-race coverage here at the Barber Motorsports Park.
For the final time, once again, photo finish here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Will it be Tim Hogan? It's going to be Christopher DeMerrick at the line.
Team racing allows multiple iRacing members to team up and race together, just like in real-world endurance series. Teammates can share driving duties, spot for one another, or be a crew chief. Team racing is free, both to join a team and to create one. Each teammate races on his or her own computer from wherever they want to. Your teammates can be anywhere in the world, and changing drivers mid-race is as easy as a click of a button. iRacing features team endurance events ranging from just a couple of hours to 24 hours in length. So, if you fancy taking part in an iRacing endurance race in the future, you can learn more about team racing on the teams page on the member website.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Barber Motorsports Park, where we've just had round 3 of the Classic IndyCar Series. We've made our way down to victory lane, and we have found our race winner, and that is going to be the driver of Matt Cook. Running in second all day long, Matt. You finally got that break for the lead at the very end. What was it like passing Josh Chin the second time that he spun, and knowing that you had this one in the bag almost?
Definitely a little bit of relief. At the same time, I feel bad for Josh. He was definitely outpacing all of us all day long, and it's unfortunate for his couple of incidents there, but definitely some relief once I was past him and just had to keep an eye on the relative and make sure that I wasn't losing any more time.
Obviously, your second win of your 2019 campaign today, obviously after 2 weeks ago taking the win at Twing Ring Motegi. One thing that was probably a little bit touch and go in your race, the second pit stop, especially on the exit, the contact with Hans Pitkin that you had, did you just not see the driver as you exited the pit lane?
We actually talked about it afterwards. There's a bit of two things going on there. First, I'm definitely turning down. I thought I had the timing right to honestly get below him because I noticed he started to kind of come up a bit, and then he was coming up, so it was a bit of a racing deal there, but honestly, I'll take the blame for it 100%. I was coming out, should have given him more room. It's a mix of things in terms of trying to make sure I remained competitive with Josh. For whatever reason, I was faster through the pit stop, and at the same time, just trying to get back in the rhythm as quickly as possible and, merge as best as I can.
Obviously, road course is not particularly your forte. You're much more of an oval guy. However, in the last sort of 6 to 8 months, you really have come out and shone on these road courses. Barber Motorsports Park, one of the hardest road courses to master, if you ask me. What was it like being out there today, especially with the traffic and just the concentration of cars which we see at this circuit?
Definitely exhausting. Honestly, there's always lap traffic nearby, or just traffic in general, and you are constantly on a knife point. The car can spin or slide at any given moment if you just make one small mistake. It's definitely a little bit mind-numbing. You just try to stay focused as best as you can, but I'm glad I got through it and didn't have any major incidents.
Matt, before we go and let you celebrate your win today with your team, who would you like to give a shout out to?
Definitely shout out to Randy and Andrew for a job well done once again, and also it's good to see Henry back. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him this time, but definitely glad to see him again, and best luck next time, Josh. Thanks again, Robert, for hosting the series.
Matt Cook, your winner here today, second win of 2019, or the driver of the number 6 machine with Aero X Banshee. And Randy Chenworth, he has found his number one driver in the series, and that's John Chin.
John Chin. Well, anyways, we're stood by.
Hold on. Let's get John now.
Yeah, we're good. Anyways, we have Joshua Chin, and while Matt Cook is celebrating with his teammates, I'm over here going to be giving my teammate a bit of a hard time. Josh, what was wrong with that number 93 car? It was fast, but it didn't like the hairpin.
The driver was really bad at holding speed through there and got on the gas too early and just spun it around
now,
twice.
Wait. I don't know. Are you admitting to account sharing? Because that would imply Jamie was driving for you.
No, Jamie doesn't spin. Jamie just plows off into the abyss.
That is true. And we weren't at turn 1 at Moss, so there's no way it could have been me behind the car. But it taught me through the difficulties of driving here at Barber. Of course, you being a big IndyCar fan, I know you're awfully familiar about getting these cars around this place and this track that you really do enjoy, and you've always been exceedingly fast at.
Yeah, I love Barber a lot, and it just fits the car really well, especially the IR05. It's a little more tricky and difficult than the DW12 or the IR18. And it was really fun, and the flow was there, and then that second half of the race, I kind of got a little out of rhythm, and I think it showed with the 2 spins.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like that a little bit, but you got back into the rhythm near the end of the race. Texas, the Indy Road Course, and Belle Isle, the next 3 races as we start heading in towards the summer. Talk me through those. Those are all pretty the first 2 definitely seem, I would say, is sort of normalish tracks. I'd say both Texas and Indianapolis, the road course, nothing really unique or difficult there. Indianapolis maybe a little bit slick, but that's about it. Barber is going to, of course, be the difficult one because I believe it's only the second time we see that track make an appearance here in the Classic IndyCar Series, and it's a street course. So talk me through that one.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, even Texas is a little bit difficult. Not a lot of downforce, and Indy Road is going to be different to see everyone on different downforce configurations, but Belle Isle is basically hope and survive, and it was my first race in the series last year, and I didn't do a good job of that, and with us having no fast repairs this year, it's all the more that you have to stay within the walls and not hit them.
All right, Josh, it was a good run from you. Who on it, any shout-outs, who gets it done for that number 93 car to allow you to spin out of the race lead in 2 road course races in 2 goes?
Got to give a thanks to everyone at Team Chimera, not you included. Didn't have the world's greatest, most attentive crew chief on the box for this race, and Jamie, but working with some of the team talent guys for this week as well. So thanks everyone, and thanks to Robert, Lucas, all those guys for putting the series on. It's always fun to run. It's a shame that Henry had his issues and didn't make the grid, and the field was a little spread out, but overall it was a really fun race.
There he is. Josh Chin comes home in the 2nd position. 3rd place tonight was Lucas LaVille. Ran in 2nd spot for quite a while, but a little bit of oversteer at the wrong time. And Lucas has stood by with Mr. Styles.
And well, obviously, Lucas, we saw that in the closing stage of the race, everything between you, Josh Chin, and Matt Cook got very close, and that tiny little mistake, which almost took you out of this race, but you managed to just about save it. Today was a tough one. But those final few laps, you must have been on edge, especially with Josh Chin right up your rear end.
Yeah, on edge is the word, definitely there. Obviously a bit disappointed because I think had I kept that pace, I would have been P2 and would have been a great result for us at Logykal Vortex Sim Racing. But difficult day. I had a rough 50 laps at the beginning. Had trouble getting comfortable and having good pace, but after I finally got settled, I was able to keep up with them and be faster than them on some occasions. So definitely some positive to be kept from that race, and I can't wait for the next one to be able to fight them again.
Obviously, I'm just looking at some information that was sent to me prior to today's race beginning. Today's race starting. Today is the 50th race in Classic IndyCar Series history. You are the driver who have the most wins. You have 7 wins out of anyone. I think Matt Cook is slowly getting close. He's now on 6, so I feel like you're probably not going to hold on to that title for too much longer. But you're also the driver who, I believe, has got the most. You're the driver with the most wins. Never got a pole position. At some point this year, are we going to see you at the front of the grid?
I hope so. I have tough competition, obviously, with Matt and Josh and Henry, Dave, Yanni on some occasions as well. So as we say pretty much every other day, the level of competition is so high now. That's for drivers like Robert and I that used to dominate every week. It's super difficult now. I feel like I stepped up my game a lot this year with the level of competition we have. I just need to find that little bit more to be able to get my first pole and crash the Cook party for P1.
And of course, 2 weeks' time, next time out, we're heading ourselves to this Motor Speedway. 372 miles, 600 kilometers we've got to run there. The first race of the Triple Crown as well this year. Is that a circuit you're particularly confident with? Because obviously, not only is there points on the line and pride on the line, but there's also, for the first time in the series history, money on the line.
Yeah, this event is going to be pretty huge for us, and we're pretty excited to have new centric solutions on board for the Triple Crown this season. I think we're gonna have a strong car once again. The guys have helped me a lot get this car right, and big thanks to them for the sub today. The car was great, and I believe we're gonna have some good chances once again in Texas.
And of course, before we release you back to your Vortex Sim Racing team to celebrate your podium position today, who would you like to give a shout out to?
A big shout out to the guys at Vortex, as you said, Robert, Timo, Jan, and Tristan for the help and all the support. Obviously today was a big day for us. Big shout out to you guys at Raceport for the continuous great coverage you provide for the league, and that is definitely something we have a lot of pride on. Big shout out to Matt as well for all the practice and the help and the support and the bring back to reality I need from time to time. And big shout out to all the drivers that are making this possible for us.
And Lucas Ville, he came home today in 3rd position, the highest of the Logykal Vortex sim racing machines and the number 2 machine. The driver who I think also has the record for the most runner-up in the championship standings in the Classic IndyCar Series history.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Oh, you're welcome. I'll bring it up whenever I can. And Randy,
man, you're just like smacking Lucas. It goes from, hey, Lucas, you used to dominate this series, but now these new guys are starting to beat up on you, and you never take pole positions, and you've never won the champion. Man, that's just, I would sue him if I were you, Lucas. That's defamation of character.
This is a weekly occurrence between me and Lucas. Like, this is constantly me and Robert are bringing this up with him.
That's true.
I think he's just getting used to it by now. And actually, Randy, you've found Robert Grosser, who today finished in 6th position.
Yeah, I'm stood by with Robert Grosser. And Robert, first thing I want to ask you about is, what is your opinion on Jack Styles repeatedly calling Lucas washed up?
Do I really have to answer this? I don't think so.
Yes.
No.
But anyways, Robert, it was definitely an interesting race from you. You started 5th, end up coming home in 6th, but seems like you're pretty much locked together with Timo Ice and Yemi pretty much that whole way. Weren't far from the 77 car of Join Kaijinen as well. I mean, that had to have been a stressful 90 laps, being basically that close to teammates and competitors pretty much the whole way.
Yeah, definitely. I've never been so exhausted like after this race today. That was super intense. I couldn't make any mistake to stay in the draft of Timo. Timo unfortunately also didn't do any mistake, so there was actually no passing opportunity at all. But I really pushed hard. I did everything I could to make a pass, but it just didn't work.
And talk me through how difficult it is actually to sort of get around this place and how frustrating it can be, because, you know, especially in these cars, we talked about it during the race, there's no push to pass. So that means, you know, you basically are depending on a mistake. You don't have any, you know, there's no straightaway that's long enough for the slipstream to really be a huge factor. I mean, how difficult could it be sitting there knowing that, you know, you could be going 30, 40, 50, 60 laps before you ever get the opportunity to make a move?
Yeah, that is that is what makes it so exhausting, really, because you not only are you fighting the other car in front of you, also you fight yourself to be patient, to not make anything stupid, because there is simply not that passing opportunity. So yeah, you really have to stay calm and just wait for that particular moment where, and then you have to make it, and that makes it so hard, definitely.
2 weeks' time on the 28th, we head out to Texas, where we've seen Fernando Alonso testing a McLaren liveried IR18. Talk me through driving this IR05 though around that place. That should put on a good show.
Yeah, first of all, I'm hoping for some hot weather so that we've
had it the last couple rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it should be great. Seriously, I'm looking forward to it. It will be a super long race, 600 kilometers. Triple Crown race. Strategy will play a big role. Patience again for such a long race, no fast repair. So it will be super intense. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, thanks for joining us, Robert. Congratulations for you coming home in 6th place. Before we let you go, who gets it done for that Vortex Sim Racing number 3?
Yeah, first of all, a big shout out to Mr. Jack Styles for celebrating his 2nd anniversary as a commentator today. Very special moment, since he started all this in the CIS 2 years ago at this track, Barber Motorsports Park. So congrats, mate. And then big shout out to all the members of CIS for the past 5 years. This was also the 50th race of our league. And we couldn't have gone so far without you drivers joining us every second week and yeah, having a lot of fun. So thanks to all the league members.
There he was. Mr. Robert Grosser comes home in the 6th spot. Last interview we have queued up for the night. Mr. Jack Styles, he stood by with the driver of the 23 of Josh Baird.
And Josh is finishing down in 13th position today. Quite a day for you, Josh, in the midfield of the pack. You were able to gain 10 positions on where you started today's race. Just take us through your race, because we didn't really see you much at all on our broadcast today.
Yeah, I tried to keep it quiet. My first race of the year, I suffered from a lot of incident points and spun quite a bit, so I wanted to be as prepared as possible with the safe car. Also, my qualification didn't go as planned. I had a hardware issue that pretty much cut out my audio for the entire qualification. So I was happy to finish, you know, still running. I know it was a high attrition race, and there was quite a few people that struggled, me included, but it was nice to be able to finish with very few incident points.
And obviously, Josh, we've seen it in the opening couple of rounds. Unfortunately, we weren't able to have it today due to some technical issues. You do provide us with an onboard view from your view of the Classic IndyCar Series races, running it in VR. What's VR like in Barber? Because we know it's a very up and down circuit, and it feels that even when you're running it on 1 or 3 monitors. But in VR, that must be a completely different experience.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a roller coaster. I'm sorry that we didn't have the opportunity to show everybody today, because it's quite a blast to be able to race in VR. You know, you got to watch out for some bumps, and you got to nail some bumps on this track as well. And in VR, when you're hitting those speeds, it's very precise and takes quite a bit of practice. So a lot of fun, but very tiring.
And of course, looking forward to the rest of the season. The next time out, we're going to Texas. Is that a circuit which you're going to be going into feeling confident? The second oval of the championship, a very different oval to Motegi.
Yeah, ovals is kind of my strong suit. My team, Iconic Motorsports, we all seem to fare better on the ovals, so I think we're gonna get together this next 2 weeks and really crank down and try and bring the best car we can. I usually try and stick within the top 10. Looking for that same effort. Would be very happy with the top 5. So, going to work very hard to get that opportunity next 2 weeks.
Well, Josh, before you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to today?
Yeah, I'd like to thank my team, Iconic Motorsports. They do a great job at giving me feedback and helping me out with the setup, trying to give us the best opportunity possible. I'd also like to thank Iconic Graphics. They're my primary sponsor this year. They're helping out quite a bit, and they're going to hopefully help us out here in the near future with some sponsorship stuff. We'll see. Little secret there for the future, but I'd like to thank my fiance for being supportive throughout this process too.
And well, before we go away today, it's worth it giving a shout out to the guys who get it at the Classic IndyCar Series and make it all possible. Of course, title sponsor for this series, Logykal Innovative Engineering. They do make brilliant solutions to some of sim racing's biggest problems. You can go and check them out over at their website. And of course, the Triple Crown, which will be starting off in 2 weeks' time, brought to you by New Centric Solutions. And then alongside that, Edifice Incorporated and the Carol Hatton Breast Cancer Care Centre will be sponsoring certain races at points during the season. I believe it is the Laguna Seca, the charity race, later on this year. And before we go, it's worth giving a shout out to everyone who gets it done here for us at RaceBot TV. And that is going to be just about all we have time for here today at Barber. And of course, that goes out to the guys who provide us with the track camera, trackcams22.com, Mr. Van Ballau, and of course, ATVO as well. The new graphics which we brought in for today for you all to feast your eyes over. That's brought to you by Simon Grossman and Andreas Werner over at Vern Designs. And of course, live timing and scoring, as always, brought to you by Nick Thyssen, which is always available on our RaceBot website. I have been Jack Stiles. Randy Chenworth has been alongside me all race long. We will see you in 2 weeks' time at Texas for the opening of the Triple Crown.